Welcome back to Season 5 of Porcelain Peak. We're your hosts with the least. I'm Tone. John, Ronnie Deutsch, and Anthony the Boy.
Hi, I'm the boy. Nice to meet you.
What's Ronnie Deutsch from?
It's the attorney, the injury attorney or whatever.
$20.
I'm Ronnie Deutsch. Wrapped up like a Deutsch.
To find one. So that's the first thing I came up with. She's always on the brain, you know what I mean? Because I always want $20.
He's committed to the bit, but not enough to prepare for it ahead of time.
It's been a busy week, fellas. Speaking of that busy week, we are still continuing with our 31 Terror Tales.
Ooh, chain rattle. Yes. I know you did some quiet ones earlier, but that was the jump scare.
Right, so this week we talked about 7 Stephen King, or we're going to talk about 7 Stephen King movies, and those were picked by viewers and listeners just like you. Before that, we got some Chop Talk. Any news?
Yeah, not quite as much as the last couple weeks where we were doing a lot of catch up and there was just a lot of shit happening, but
This is a little more mustard.
I have
a few things going on.
I have a question I want to propose to you guys, and then after that we'll play trivia, and then we will get into our main discussion. So that's what we got coming up. We hope that you stay with us.
Stick around.
Why don't you take an axe and chop it open?
All right, Ash Choppers, how you doing?
Chopping ass, baby.
Taking names. I
came here to do two things.
Suck some hard candies and suck some dicks.
Well, we know how John's doing.
He's good. I filled him up with meat right before we started recording.
He did, and he also let me have some tri-tip.
There you go.
Yeah, when I walked in, you were like, "You want to get down on some of this pink?" And I'm like, "I'm sorry, dude, but I am spoken for. I have a girlfriend."
It was rare meat, okay? It was rare meat.
It was.
You can't call your dick rare meat, like just to make it sound fancier.
You're like, it's just uncooked. It's raw.
Oh man, so you're good?
Yeah.
Right on. Cool. How are you?
Well, after that, I'm feeling great.
Yeah.
We've had quite a few chuckles, but I've just been enjoying the Halloween season so far. I think this week of movies was much more enjoyable than last week. Last week wasn't terrible by any means, but we always have one of those weeks during Terror Tales where it's like
we've had a Terror Tales where it was mostly like I
shit.
got to get through this.
Yeah, just
somehow.
Terrible things. So the fact that we got so many awesome movies out of this week, I had a really good time.
I'm in agreement. Yeah, I got a little spooked today. I want to share this with you guys.
Ooh.
So my office building is basically like the size of a house and kind of laid out very similar to a house.
Okay,
and
don't
today,
need to brag, but all right. Oh, your office building.
Yeah,
I thought
you said his office.
Yeah, I thought you said my office is like the size of a house.
Yeah, like laid out the same. I have separate rooms for what I'm doing. Anyway, no. It's the whole building. There's multiple people there. I share an office with like 12 people, so it's not cool. Anyway, today everybody left. Like the boss left early, and so everyone was like, "Oh, well, he's gone. I'm going to go." And I still had some work to do. But then I was like, "Well, I'm going to close up in a minute here, turn off all the lights." And I was like, "Well, I got to take a shit. Might as well do it here."
Mm-hmm.
So then everything's hella dark, and I was just like sitting in the bathroom. And the bathroom, the way that they have it set up, it's not stalls. It's just like little tiny rooms in the room. So it has just like a regular door like this.
Oh, yeah, I've been in ones
And I
like
was like,
that.
this is so weird. And then I was like sitting there doing my business.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is actually fucking terrifying. So I was just like, let's go. Because then I was like, I just stared at the crack in the door, just like waiting for
Footsteps.
Yeah,
it was a shadow.
I was like, no. And then after I was all good and I was just about to leave and I had everything off, and then the door opened, and it used to be like a family service center. So we get still like vagrants and people looking for help. Some of them are really disheveled and aggressive and violent. There's been like stabbings and jumpings and fights. And violence.
Speaking of spooky stuff, that jump scared me a little bit.
Yeah, so somebody came in and I was like, well, like, what am I going to do? So I grabbed my giant water bottle that's a massive Yeti.
It's like a 32-ounce Yeti bottle,
So
yeah.
I was like, here we go, dude.
Yeah.
And I was like the nicest dude. He's like, hey, I'm here for whatever. And I was like, oh, thank God. Like,
I want to beat the shit out of you,
I was like, I don't know.
No, after he says, like, I'm just here for the day. Wow!
I'm about to clock out. Yeah, anyway.
We'll clock you out, bitch.
Before we get to the news, though, I wanted to ask you guys a little question here. And I was thinking about this before you told us the news about Halloween Ends. And then you told us the news about Halloween Ends. And I was like, oh, that's perfect. So it's out. By the time you hear this, it'll be out. It comes out tomorrow at time of recording. I guess tonight if you're feeling nasty.
Yeah.
But
which
I
I
was-
will be.
You said that it's probably going to be pretty divisive, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that led me to want to ask you guys this. Do you think that it's better for a horror movie to be kind of this middling divisive thing where it's like creates this argument, creates buzz, or do you think it's better for it to just be great? Because I feel like you get things like The Witch, which for the most part, I mean, I know we had some issues with it on our first watch, but for the most part, critically, it was loved, right? But I don't know a lot of people that have seen it.
Well,
But you get stuff like
and I think I know.
Ends.
I've heard of more people with The Witch having gone to see it and had that same experience that we had, where they walked out and their whole audience was like, "What the fuck did we just watch?"
Yeah.
And I think in retrospect, people have come to appreciate that movie a lot more.
So what do you think is better for a movie?
If we're talking about monetarily,
Well, whatever. Anyway, you want
be
to think about
the middling movie that gets a lot of people talking, because then people are the ones, they're like, well, I got to see it for myself, so I'm gonna check it out.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like we live in an age where people don't want to be not a part of the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
So when you have a movie where everybody is talking about like, oh shit, you got to see this, because either it's especially if people are arguing about whether it's good or not. Right. Like, if it's just everybody going like, oh, this movie is shit, but if there is that genuine divisiveness and people are putting up, good arguments either way, yeah, people are going to be like, I got to see this so that I can hopefully people are saying, I got to see this so I can form my own opinion. I know there are plenty of people who go, oh, the trailer looked like shit, so I'm going to go online and join the conversation of, fuck this thing. Like, and it's the same with TV shows that are running right now where it's like, I've never watched an episode of Rings of Power or She-Hulk or whatever, but I'm going to spend literally months of my life shitting on it on the internet.
Complaining about a pair of green butt cheeks going up and down.
Yeah, and there's plenty of other stuff wrong with She-Hulk besides the twerking, and I still enjoy it, have enjoyed it, but yeah, that's a really tough question because I would love it if
things were just dope.
If
all
things
the
were just
time.
dope and like the movies were just all great and that's why they were successful. But it does seem like we live in a time where the things that cause arguments get more clicks, and they literally algorithmically that's how these sites are built. Is like the more back and forth is going on, the more the shit goes up to being viral, and then you get movies that everyone's talking about that no one would have heard of a week ago. Like, I think that more people probably heard about something like Don't Worry Darling, not because the movie was particularly divisive, but because there were just people arguing about like the behind the scenes drama about that movie for like a month before it came out.
How did that movie do? Did anyone know?
Nobody really liked it. I think it was
nobody liked it, but a lot of people went to see it because Harry Styles is in it. But
God, it looks so cool.
But
I saw somebody on Twitter be like, looks like or it's like, oh, that's why he's not called Harry Substance. Like they saw his performance and they were like, yeah, that's why he's not called Harry Substance.
That's pretty good. I do feel like that movies like Barbarian, or even to probably a greater extent Nope, really succeed on the back of a lot of those conversations where it's like, this movie is going to be for a specific crowd and it's aimed for the right mindset. And if you're not in that mindset, it will be divisive for those people. Mm-hmm. And I don't think that those movies, either of them, are bad by any stretch. I think they're both very, very good.
Mm-hmm. I'm trying to think of the last movie where, like, because usually what'll happen is that the people who, like, the majority of people whose opinions I go to or that I care about, like, if I love a movie, they tend to also be on that same page, and it kind of seems like the general consensus from people,
consensus.
Yeah, exactly. From people who are, I don't know, on the same wavelength as me. Like if it's all positive, I'm like, hey, that makes sense. I'm trying to think of like what the last movie was where it was really divisive, because like Nope seemed to be like the majority of people outside of like was it Logan Paul or Jake? One of the Pauls didn't like it, and that
Logan
became
Paul.
a big thing. But most people were like, you're fucking dumb. That movie's amazing. And I'm trying to think of like the last one where people were like, I genuinely don't know whether this is a good or a bad movie.
Malignant. That's probably the last
that's
time.
perfect. Malignant. Yeah, that's a movie that I love, but also understand why people would. Like, that's the thing is like,
Very
but I
divisive.
completely understand why people wouldn't like that movie.
But that's a good point, because think about how much we talked about that back and forth. Like, we went into Malignant. You've had plenty of conversations about it. I mean, we continue to talk about, like, just the back and forth of that movie.
Yeah, and I would
think
say
if it would have been 100%, I don't think that we would.
And I would say that Halloween Kills was probably also that, because there is a massive contingent of the horror community that fucking loves Halloween Kills because it delivered.
I don't get it.
Well, it's because it delivered on literally the only thing they wanted out of that movie, which was lots of stabby. Just lots of people getting stabbed and blood. And I go into these up until Halloween Kills, went into these Halloween movies expecting something that was promised to us, which was something that they seemed to be going through a lot of effort to make it more akin to the original Halloween. Mm-hmm. I'm not somebody who's like, I'm diehard Halloween like as a franchise, because the majority of that franchise sucks ass. Like, I've been on record saying that Halloween probably has one of the worst like total franchises out of all of the big ones. But that first movie is so fucking incredible that when you promise like, hey, now we're going to just disregard all that bullshit and go back to the original, and then you make a movie like Kills, which to me was like, oh, never mind.
Back to the bullshit.
Yeah, we're just going back to the bullshit. And from what I've heard, Ends is something completely removed from both of those movies. So I don't know what to expect. I haven't seen it yet. I'm going to watch it tonight because one,
really?
You want to get it before the spoilers.
Yeah, one, I'm so online that I don't want to have anything spoiled for me.
Dude, I'm so online.
It's on terminally.
You might as well call me America because I'm online.
Call me AOL.
That dates you, bro. Hard.
It was funny though.
Yeah,
but it was funny, huh?
But people are saying like it's Spooky Astronauts did her review, and she was like, this doesn't even feel like it's in the same trilogy as those other two movies. Like,
really?
Yeah, it goes like so complete. And she did not like it at all. She said it was pretty bad, but she was like, but I was entertained because it's so batshit. The decisions they make, like, they're so baffling. And that's got me morbidly curious enough to go watch it tonight.
Yeah,
because I'm like, I know I'm gonna hate it, and that's fine. I've been talking shit about Halloween Kills for a year. I expected to not like the ending of this trilogy. It already shit the bed for me, and I didn't have any expectations. And so going into this, I'm like, well, I would rather have a movie that's completely baffling than a movie that's so boring that I'm just like, why the fuck did I just waste my time? Like, if it does some crazy shit where I'm like, okay, that's bananas.
Yeah,
I'm fine with it.
Well, I think that's a good question to pose too, and I had thought about that. And now that you bring it up, it reminded me. It's like, well, what are you wanting out of this? Like, what are people wanting out of a fourth, in a way, right? Entry into this Halloween series, and it's like, do you want Carpenter-esque style? Do you want kills? Do you want something more along the lines of David Gordon Green? It's like, I don't know what I want out of it personally, because the first one, 2018, worked for me as a sequel to the original. Mm-hmm. It had its moments that I thought were fine, and I felt like Kills didn't do almost anything for me.
That's the thing, is that at the end I knew they left room for there to be more.
Yeah,
but it also felt like if they would have shot like 2 extra minutes of footage, it could have been final, and they put it together well.
In 2018.
Yeah, it had good scares. It had great character development moments. The score is put together, in a beautiful way. I love the fact that father and son get to work together on that. And just the visual style was interesting. Yeah. None of that carries over to Kills for me.
Well, yeah, I mean, we're going to talk about all three, so I don't want to get too far into it. I guess just like, what are you wanting from Ends?
I wanted it to end at the end of 2018 is what I'm saying.
Okay, I see. All right, yeah. That should have been Halloween Ends.
Yes.
I think that H2O should have been the last Halloween movie. I think that H2O is also not perfect and not even close to being compared with the original, but is a pretty good wrap up and also continuation of Laurie's story.
And just fun.
And it just comes down to, are you... I have a hard time sometimes, like, especially being on Instagram so much and like in the horror community, and then being mostly in the horror community on Twitter.
There's an apologist for everything.
Well, yeah, and it's just like there are a contingent of people, and I'm kind of jealous of them, who, if the movie has Ghostface, Leatherface, Michael Myers, whatever, on screen,
Shatner face.
Yeah, on screen.
You did what in your face?
That's enough for them. So there are people who are just like, they're the ones who are just reporting on every bit of Scream 6 news that comes out, because they're just like, and I'm like, how could you possibly be that excited about the 6th Scream movie or the 14th Halloween movie or whatever it is? But, as somebody who is super into horror, I also am like, okay, well, if this is what we're going to get, like, I'm hoping for at least a well-made movie that tells me why this should exist. And that's the biggest sin to me, is when you come back with something, especially a trilogy of movies, where it has yet to, and I don't think it will, explain to me or give me a reason why they made 3 more Halloween movies.
It's explained its use case for 1 more movie, and then promptly shit itself to
But
death.
even then, it's
I
like,
can tell
but
you
you
the
already
answer
did
to
H2O,
everything.
so it's like, why? So 40 years later, it never needed to be made, and makes even less sense, like, for Laurie Strode's character, and it's just gotten worse, and like she's become more of just like an insane person throughout these movies, like at least these last 2, and I'm sure she's gonna be completely off the wall bonkers in the new one.
It's money, dude. It's
Yeah.
the reason they do everything.
Yeah.
It's money. That's
Yes.
the only reason that a lot of, especially in the horror franchise, low budget, you get easy actors. I mean, obviously not in this case because you get Jamie Lee Curtis, but for the most part, the other people in this movie,
Well, and then there's
maybe you know some of them, but you don't know all of them.
Well, yeah, and then there's just the group of
And they
people
just
who
make
are like,
tons of money.
if it has blood and guts, it is a winner for me. It's the same. It's the group of people who love Terrifier and are obsessed with the fact that Terrifier 2 is making this is part of Chop Talk.
Yeah, we can go ahead and get into it.
That Terrifier 2 is making people vomit and pass out in movie theaters. Whenever I hear that, I just always think, like, how many movies have come out in my lifetime, and then even beyond that, back to The Exorcist, that hyped up the whole idea of like people getting physically ill. I've heard some people say like there actually is so much. It's not that bad, Zig. It's just Terrifier 2. Okay, I know you don't like the gory movies. You like to watch your Little House on the Prairie. You like things to be all sanitized, Zig. All right, but this is a horror podcast. All right, okay. Yeah, that's what I thought.
He doesn't like the sass.
Yeah, he's like, no, point taken. But yeah,
Sorry about that.
I just it just goes back. I'll finish by saying again what I said is I want these movies to have a reason for existing, and I don't feel like this franchise should have gone on as long as it has. But that is a nice segue into a little bit of news that I had about Heather Langenkamp.
Oh,
We talked about Midnight Club in our bonus for Patreon. You should check that out.
Yeah,
get
good
on the
call.
Patreon. It is now just $5 for all of that shit on Patreon, so definitely check it out. She said in a recent interview for Midnight Club that she wants to fight Freddy one more time. She wants to do a Nightmare on Elm Street, and literally in the interview she said, I've seen how well it's worked for Jamie Lee Curtis coming back, and I've been so excited to see her coming back for her trilogy. I want to at least come back for one more movie.
I think Angle could do it.
oh my god!
I think he could do one
dude.
more.
I got chills.
I think
Her
Angle
and
could.
England?
I think he could do one more.
I
He
want-
doesn't think he can, but I think he can.
I want it.
Just wait until...
And then it's gonna come out and we're gonna be like, yeah. Why does this exist?
well, I mean, we'll just wait until David Gordon Green finishes his
Exorcist.
probably disastrous Exorcist trilogy, and then he'll move on to Nightmare on Elm Street because
Yeah.
Blumhouse is like buying all the rights to literally all of these big horror
Call
icons.
it F40.
But yeah, in sort of the Halloween vein, since we were talking about that, John Carpenter's been doing a lot of interviews because I guess they like. I don't know if they just show up to his house and he's just smoking weed and playing video games, and they're like, "Hey, you want to talk about Halloween?" And he's just like, "Yeah, sure, whatever." Because it's like he's barely involved outside. Like he does the music and whatever, but outside of that, like he couldn't give 2 shits about what's going on with Halloween.
You want a glass of
But
formaldehyde?
he, you know, it's just John Carpenter, John Carpenter. So one of the things that I thought was hilarious is I sent you guys the screen cap of him just having no fucking clue what the interviewer that interviewed him was talking about when they asked him what he thought about elevated horror, and then said like, oh, like A24, like Hereditary, Midsommar. And he was like, yeah, I have no fucking clue what you're talking about. And then outlets started reporting, John Carpenter slams A24 movies. And I'm like, he is a 100-year-old man who...
I don't even
Quit-
think he's in his 80s.
Quit
No.
taking his life force from him. He needs it to survive. We need him a little longer, okay?
Wow. Angela Lansbury just died.
I
Yeah.
saw that, yeah.
Say, we watched all of our horror heroes die. We don't need any more to go. John Carpenter's the only one we've got left.
Yeah, and then when Eli Roth goes, dude.
God, there will be no more visions. Yeah, but John Carpenter is a big video game fan, and he was asked in an interview, and this is something that he's been talking about for like 10 years, whether he would do a video game adaptation, and he has said repeatedly that he would love to do a Dead Space movie. So now everybody's like, fucking give John Carpenter all the money to do a Dead Space movie.
That'd be so tight.
I would want him to just go straight like 70s, 80s with it, dude.
Yeah, all practical, like animatronics and shit.
I love
Hell
that
yeah.
shit. And we're going to talk about it later,
yeah.
why it works.
Well, and Dead Space is already extremely influenced by The Thing. Like, the monsters in that are all like...
It's like a crossover of The Thing and
tentacles
Alien.
and shit. Yeah. So, perfect, like, wheelhouse for him. The music would be dope. And on top of that, he's actually played all the games. He talked about how, like, he likes even the like, third or fourth one that's more action... The third one that's more action-based. He's like, no, I love all of them. And it's like, okay, cool. Finally get a director who's actually played the video games to make the adaptation. That would be cool.
Yeah.
He seems like such a fucking just
Speaking of video
badass
games.
dude.
Speaking of video games, apparently akin to Dead by Daylight, and then followed up by that with
Evil Dead.
Friday the 13th and Evil Dead. Apparently they're going to be doing a very similar style game for Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yeah, I think once they
Wow.
once that formula was like unlocked to the world by Dead by Daylight, now they're just like, oh, we'll just do that. That's literally the perfect formula for the slasher genre, and we'll just turn all of these properties into. I think the reason that
gonna be a
Halloween
scale,
one
right?
hasn't happened is because these movies have been being made like and coming
Yeah.
out every year, and they're like, don't fuck it up with a bad game while we're trying to get these movies out. You done fucked it up yourself, David Gordon Green. But we, like I said, we talked about Midnight Club in our Patreon episode. Flanagan's been doing a bunch of interviews. He talked a little bit about the fall of the House of Usher, his next project based on the Edgar Allan Poe story, which I've read plenty of times. I think it's very spooky and an awesome
What's
little
the name
short
of the story?
The Fall of the House of Usher. The Haunting of the Fall of the House of Usher. of the Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. Yeah. I actually got some circus news in this. Man, we are just connecting all the dots. But he said that it's the most ambitious and biggest project that he's worked on, and that it's also the closest he's ever come to making a Giallo project. He said it's very colorful and bloody, and I'm like, you mix Poe, Flanagan, Giallo, I'm 100% there.
You're like I've 100% already came in my
See
pants.
this? My pants are already getting shorter.
And if there's any three guys that like Giallo, it's these three guys.
And it was all yellow.
They live here.
We literally took pictures.
We did take some pictures.
Yeah.
In general.
General Pictures. Andy Serkis is going to be doing a Wicker Man television show.
Right on.
Huh?
Is he playing the Wicker Man?
Is he the bees?
Yeah, I'm just like, every time he gets announced for a project, I'm like, okay, how is motion capture involved? Which is,
fucked up on our end.
yeah, fucked up on our end because I'm sure he's trying to break away from that. But
He's so good though.
yeah, it's just like,
That's like Doug what's his nuts trying to get away from
I fucking love Doug What's His Nuts.
but you know what I'm
Loved
talking
it.
about?
I loved him as the Silver Surfer.
Yeah. But have you see him in anything else? Have you ever seen him in anything not in prosthetics?
No, I don't think so.
That's what I'm saying. Stick with what you're good at. And he's the best at it.
Yeah, he is a living ghoul. We talk about Brendan Fraser a lot in I saw somebody in a tweet recently was like, if you need any help with this, his last name is rhymes with laser, because a lot of people say Brendan Fraser, but it's Brendan Fraser like a laser.
Yeah.
So that helped me a little bit because I make that flub too. The Mummy came up in a conversation while he was, I'm sure, doing interviews for The Whale, and they asked him, one, what he thought about the Tom Cruise Mummy, and two, if he would be willing to return for another Mummy movie. He said he has no idea how a return from his character would work, but he would be totally open to it if somebody came up with an idea that interested him enough. And in terms of Tom Cruise's Mummy, he said that the one thing missing from it that made it not work was fun. He said that it took itself way too seriously and was trying to do straight up horror. And the thing that made his Mummy movies, at least the first two, work was that they had a sense of irreverence and fun, which I 100% agree with. Those movies are fun as shit.
They're adventure movies first.
Yeah, 100%. I don't know if necessarily I need to see another Mummy movie in any regard, but also Brendan Fraser I don't think needs to come back as that character, but it would get butts and seats. People would, even
I would go.
Even if he came for like a cameo in a new Mummy movie, everybody would freak the fuck out. The last bit of news that I wanted to end Chop Talk with is James Wan is producing a new project called Megan, with a 3 as the E. He's not directing this. I think it was written by his wife, who also wrote Malignant. I checked out the trailer. It looks pretty much like the new Chucky, the reboot or whatever.
Yeah.
The concept is a girl loses her parents, And then Allison Williams from Girls and Get Out is like her adoptive mother or somebody working with her, and she's also like a roboticist, and she's built this android girl, and of course they bring the android girl home, and she goes, I'm going to protect this little girl at any cost, including killing people. The reason I bring it up, though, is because you definitely need to watch the trailer, because there's a sequence where this little creepy-ass Uncanny Valley robot girl does like a crazy Sia-style dance with like a knife in her hand in this red hallway, and it's become this like crazy meme, at least all over Twitter, where people just like are in love with just that clip of her just like, you know,
Go ahead.
Just shaking her ass,
yeah.
You know, and she's a robot. So, but yeah, it's just become a huge meme. So I would say check out the trailer just to see that part of it, because it's hilarious and looks like it may get just as off the wall as Malignant. And if you liked that, then
I'm there.
check it out.
Cool. Anything
All I
else?
got.
I think that ought to do it.
All right, that's going to wrap it up for Chop Talk. We'll go ahead and move into that trivia.
That Christmas house of wax, the fog, piranha. It's one of those, right? Right?
In a crazy turn of events, Anthony, hit us with that trivia tune.
On the mic. All right, here we go.
Disgusting. Edit that out, John.
Your trivia song this week is Trivia, 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 Trivia.
It's Green Day. All right. Yeah.
No, that's not My Life is Pretty Plain.
Yeah, I don't know who sings the song.
Melon?
Yeah,
With the bees?
All I can say is that my life is pretty. I love that song.
Yeah.
Played at the end of I think episode 2 of Midnight Club.
Yeah, the soundtrack is fantastic. I don't think we talked about that in our bonus episode, but
Yeah, so let me know if my rendition of this week's trivia song was enough to...
If it sounds more like that, or if it sounds more like Basket Case by Green Day, because I think it also sounds like Basket Case by
isn't
Green
that
Day.
like...
No, or maybe not Basket Case.
Trivia. Trivia.
Yeah, he knows the song.
Trivia. Do a kickflip.
Yeah. Do a kickflip, motherfucker.
Yeah, if my rendition was good enough that you want me to do the trivia songs going forward, too bad. I don't feel like doing it every week.
Wow, all right, we're playing horror movie night or whatever. We're going to do 4 rounds of Q&A.
Yeah, if you want to find this game, go ahead and just Google horror movie night whatever. It'll pop right up.
Dude, do it and let me know if it comes up. Make this dickhead eat his words.
Or maybe you'll find a trivia that we haven't found yet, and if so, please send us the link, because we're running out of options.
That's also a good point. All right, anyway, 4 rounds of Q&A and then 2 rounds of Name That Movie. I'll read to John. John's going to read to Anthony, and then Anthony will read back to me. John, are you ready? All right. Which David Cronenberg movie starring Young Gollum won an Oscar for Best Makeup and Hairstyling?
Did you say starring Golem?
No, wrong.
There's much more shit. That'd be David Cronenberg's The Fly.
Sir, nice job, man. You're on the board. These questions, I gotta know, like, if these are easy for everybody, because I feel like,
I mean, so if I read the question, like, I feel like if I read this question to most people in public, or most people that I know that aren't in this room, they probably wouldn't get it. I think it's
All
just,
right.
but if I read it to literally anybody that we talk to on the internet, they'd know immediately and be like, oh, it's hella easy. Just
Sure.
depends on who you hang out with, I guess.
Anthony, which horror franchise features the
What? Can't do this for every question, okay?
I made complete sense without Jeff Goldblum.
I know this is a crazy demand, but can I get intelligible words for mine?
On our audio podcast.
Say the Jigsaw Killer.
Okay. Well, I have read a few of the books of Saw, so I'm gonna say Saw.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, Lee Winnell tweeted today that apparently at some point Quentin Tarantino put one of Lee Winnell's written movies, I'm not sure which one, on his list of worst movies of the year, and Lee Winnell was so hurt by it that that's when he decided that he was not going to say anything bad about other people's work going forward. And then Flanagan retweeted it today and was like, yeah, I'm on the same boat. Like, we're all struggling to get shit made. And
why would Quentin Tarantino say so many bad things about Dead Silence?
that's immediately what came to my mind. It was Dead Silence for sure.
No, dude.
No, dude.
What about the last key or whatever?
Oh, Insidious.
Insidious 5 or whatever.
I doubt that Tarantino even took the time to watch that, but he probably saw Dead Silence.
Anyway.
We love you, Lee.
All right, Tone, if you can't get this one, we're not friends anymore.
Tucker's all around.
Question: which high school sci-fi horror movie stars Elijah Wood, Josh Heartthrob, and The Daily Show's Jon Stewart?
Jean Stewart.
The Faculty.
It is indeed The Faculty.
What did you say? Invasion of the Body Snatchers?
Did you say Invaders from Mars? Right on, cool. We're all on the board. John, next question. Which movie features the line, I see dead people?
Titanic.
You do see a lot of dead people in that movie.
No, they're icy. Icy dead people.
Icy dead people. Damn.
This is a fun question.
The Six Saints.
That is correct, sir, for the lead. Temporarily.
Yeah,
I'm
very
sure.
temporarily.
No offense.
Anthony, who directed the 2004 remake of Dawn of the Dead?
That's a good question.
That is a good question, yeah. That was directed by visionary DC Universe mastermind Zack Snyder.
It is indeed Zack Snyder.
Probably,
Of Hanover.
in my opinion, probably his best movie. Written by James Gunn. Of the Scooby-Doo movies fame. Tone.
Yes.
Which 2014 comedy horror movie set in New Zealand was turned into a mockumentary TV series in 2019?
How new are these cards?
2019.
I guess, yeah, at
That would
least,
be
huh?
the newest, I guess, yeah.
What We Do in the Shadows.
It is indeed What We Do in the Shadows.
Oh, God.
Kind of crazy because that TV show, I was like, I could see that working, and that has made that whole franchise like stratospherically more popular than
It's
it
so
was just
funny,
based
though.
on that movie. Yeah, I love that movie. I haven't seen too much of the show, but
All right. All tied. John, what is the name of the killer plant in Little Shop of Horrors?
Audrey the...
That is correct. Good job. I don't know if I would have got that one.
oh, there was a really good
There you go. Get some.
West Side Story. There was a really good Suddenly Seymour joke. I think it was in Midnight Club. Suddenly, yeah, it was like, and then because she was talking about how the like one kid who was there like wanted some exotic Venus flytrap imported to like get the sap from it, and she was like, yeah, then Suddenly Seymour suddenly sees is like seizured or something like that.
Yeah.
I thought it was a really nice play on words.
That's funny. Hey, the Beetlejuice musical is coming to San Francisco.
Oh shit!
December.
I would be very interested in seeing that.
Just throwing that out there for you guys before I forget.
Anthony, which dystopian horror franchise is based on the idea that for 12 whole hour, all crimies are legal?
What's happening to you?
He's under the impression that if he reads the cards like he's Borat, it'll be way tougher for me.
Oh, it's so much more difficult? Oh my god.
My wife. That's going to be The Purge.
The Purge.
That is a franchise that for whatever reason yesterday I was thinking about, like, that first movie with Ethan Hawke is basically just like a run-of-the-mill home invasion movie, and it's okay. And the fact that it's had like 5 sequels and has become a huge franchise is pretty crazy.
Because a lot of the
And
sequels,
a show.
a lot of the sequels are considered to be better than the original.
Well, because in the original, everybody's complaint was you have this awesome conceit about people being able to do crime all night and have it be legal, and then you have the whole thing take place in one house.
Yes, I don't know if the other movies are necessarily as horror-based as the first one. The first one is meant to scare you.
Yeah.
The other ones, I think, are like, let's go fuck shit up.
Yeah.
It's aliens.
Yeah. Hood rat shit.
My friend.
Tone, this is probably the first difficult one of these questions that we've gotten, so I'm not sure. I'm not even going to read it in a weird
I'm not sure.
Borat accent. I'm just going to give it to you straight.
Wish you would.
What was the name of the chainsaw-wielding character in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre films?
I knew he was fine. For a second, I was like, Head cheese. Leatherface.
It is Leatherface.
Leatherface.
Oh,
We're all still tied?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, last round of Q&A here. John, in which 2013 movie did Scarlett Johansson play a mysterious woman who preys on men in Scotland?
Under the Tuscan Skin.
That is more or less correct.
It's right behind you.
I don't know what movie that was, but could I be in it? Can I be one of those Scottish men?
Hello, I'm Scottish man.
Yes, Scarlett Johansson, absorb me into your black ink meat pool.
Anthony, who played Victor Frankenstein in the 1957 Hammer horror film The Curse of Frankenstein?
See, that's a good question, too.
Mm-hmm. That's a curveball, and I like it. Is that Christopher Lee?
No.
Who played... Wait.
Who played Victor
Frankenstein? I was
Yeah.
thinking of the creature.
We'll give it to you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a little brain mix-up.
Little brain toot. Come on, baby. You notice.
Is it Peter Cushing?
It is indeed Peter Cushing.
Yeah, I was pretty sure it was Peter Cushing. Okay, well, thanks for giving me the benefit of the doubt there.
Give you a little grace.
I figured you misheard.
Yeah.
Because you...
You heard Frankenstein. You were like,
yeah, I've got to be the first person that's confused those two, right?
Right.
Tone, who directed the 1983 body horror, and I could stop there, movie Videodrome?
David Cronenberg.
That Cronenberg, man, popping up everywhere.
Those DC movies are crazy.
I know, right?
They've changed a lot over the years. All right, we're moving into Name That Movie. We're trying to get the other person to guess a movie using 3 words and not saying forbidden words, kind of like taboo.
Or Voldemort.
Or sure.
He puts a taboo on his name in the Deathly Hallows.
Okay, what am I doing here? Fuck. All right. Let's see.
You guys see that Alan Rickman's diaries have been published? And yeah, I broke into his house and I stole them shits. I was like, I want to see all the dirty deets about Harry Potter. No, but yeah, it's one of those weird skeezy things where every excerpt they take off is like something that I'm sure he didn't want the rest of the world to read about how he thought Emma Watson's performance in the early movies was, a childish, unprofessional performance, or how he felt
said
like
that?
Well, he had some, Alan Rickman quip about how she wasn't like ready for the big leagues or whatever because none of them were because they were kids, know.
And he's Alan Rickman.
Yeah, and then he, little jab comments like that. And it's like, well, the dude still did an excellent performance in 8 movies, so. Anywho,
all right, John. Let's see. I'll say Cena, Wells, and what's another one?
I think I'm good, but
And goggles, I guess.
and goggles.
I don't know, right?
I'm guessing based on Wells and Cena. I'm guessing it's the Invisible Man.
That's correct, sir. Yes.
Very clever. Okay. Yeah, I was completely thrown by Cena.
Yeah, I was thrown by Cena at first, and I was like,
I was listening to this podcast earlier, and they were doing like this movie is an updated version of classic literature. And he went through some of the Shakespearean ones, and one of the ones he asked them was Hollow Man. And they were completely stumped. I was like, really? And then they guessed, and he was wrong. And he was like, okay, you've seen Hollow Man? And she was like, yeah. He was like, what's it about? She was like, well, it's a man. He goes invisible. It's just like, lady. Anyway.
It's based on the ancient written works of the Greek philosopher Boethius.
the story is called The Translucent Dude.
Anyway, I could not say bandages, experiment, or scientist. I don't want to say Clive. Who plays the Invisible Man? That's not right, huh?
It's not Clive Owen. That's a new guy. Claude Rains.
Claude.
Yeah.
There we go.
Not Claire Danes, but Claude Rains.
What's the difference?
a lot.
Fair.
One of them's a corpse. So
Can I get all my Can I get all my Claude Rains to the right and all my Claire Danes to the left?
all right, so I will preface, I have not seen this. I think I can get there.
But you're assuming I've seen it?
Yes, I know you've seen it.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
All right, so
Let me see. This one, there's usually like an abbreviation that goes before that. Maybe you can use that. I don't know. Maybe that's too much. Anyway, you do your thing.
You do you, J-Boo.
are you saying like one that's like 5 letters that like
Yeah.
yes. All right, so I think the thing in front of this
Yeah. And
and then that thing.
and then what about like
Yeah.
There's 3 words on the card, and you guys...
Yeah.
yeah.
All right.
Carry the 7.
All right. David,
Okay.
siblings, OBGYN.
Dead Ringers.
Is it Dead Ringers? Would you have gotten it from body horror siblings?
Probably. But when you said David, my mind immediately went to Michael Fassbender.
I was worried about that.
Yeah, but then when you said siblings, I was pretty sure it was Dead Ringers, and then, yeah, OBGYN. I was like, oh, yeah. Yeah. This is going to be a really tough one, and I'm not even fibbing. These are hard sometimes because,
Harder for you, right?
yeah, harder for me to, like, come up with the words.
Yeah.
Um,
I think too.
doing all my mental math. Okay, we'll go with
292.13.
We'll go with Tim. PTSD.
Okay.
And
Tentacles.
It's more of like a tail, but okay.
and I'll just say visions.
Jacob's Ladder.
It is Jacob's Ladder.
I had you from Tim.
Yeah, with some of these, I was like, I'm just going to have to go with the other word, but it was Robbins. I couldn't say. Vietnam or hallucinations. And I was like, that's the whole movie. It's Vietnam and hallucinations.
Oh, I forgot. On mine, it's Cronenberg, twins, and gynecologist were the words that I couldn't
Yeah,
say.
so sometimes you got to just go with the next best word.
All right, John, you got. We're all still tied, in case that wasn't clear. House, Japan, and
House, 1,000 corpses. Damn, is that Texas Chainsaw Massacre?
All right, so
You're definitely freaking some people out because there's some people that can't stand hearing that noise because it scared them so much.
yeah. I used to have a friend in high school that hated it, and so I used to call her up all the time. Just do it.
Is it The Grudge?
That is correct.
Okay, so I was just making sure I wasn't mixing it up with The Ring.
Yeah, because I don't think that's like house based, right?
Yeah.
To me, anyway.
It's well based.
In what? Anyway.
This well is not a home.
All right,
Clean sweep for you. Sorry.
I've got 3 words for you here.
I love you.
Hi, Georgie.
You could have also gone with beep beep Richie. Is that it?
It is indeed it.
Is that it?
Yep. I couldn't
Stephen
say.
King's? Oh my gosh.
I couldn't say clown, balloon, or king. I figured I could
say curse, haunted boy.
haunted boy.
I'm the clown balloon king. This one's gonna be very
But
easy,
we're talking
and
about
I'm
that
not
later. How
fibbing.
funny is that?
Yeah, so weird. It's almost like Pennywise is in the room. Cannibal,
Okay.
Clarice,
Oh my god.
and Foster.
Australian for beer.
Okay, Foster. Okay.
Yeah, that's
Silence
specifically.
of the Lambs.
It is. I couldn't say Hannibal, FBI, or murder, but that leaves me with a bunch of options.
Yeah.
There, so
Too many options. You could have said Chianti, and you
Yeah.
probably would have been there.
fava beans.
Oh, you know what I learned recently? So you guys know what EGOTs are?
yeah.
Or what an EGOT is?
Yes.
The Emmys, Grammys, Oscars, Tonys.
Right, yeah. So only I think less than 20 people have
I think
won.
most recent person who
All of
to
it.
EGOT was, is it Pharrell?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess there's like controversy around it that a lot of them don't win in the spirit of what the award is for. It's like for silly things. It's like
Yeah.
they kind of got it. I think Mel Brooks is like the first person that got him for like what the award was actually for.
Because I know Gaga is close, but her Oscars are for like songs that she wrote
Yeah.
for movies, as opposed to any of her acting roles so
Right.
far. So people are like, "Well, she hasn't got it for
Yeah.
acting." So
So shit like that. Anyway,
And I think her Tony is for just an actual performance of her, like with what's his face?
the old dude,
Yeah, you know what I'm
Yeah.
talking about.
Tony Bennett,
Yeah,
yeah. Anyway,
for Tony's for Tony.
you guys are also familiar with the Razzies.
Mm-hmm.
So there is a thing called a REGOT, and only one person has gotten all of them.
Is it Whoopi Goldberg?
It is not Whoopi Goldberg. That was my initial guess, too. It is actually Liza Minnelli.
That checks out.
Yeah,
And I was like, that's so funny. That's so cool. She's, as far as I know, the only person.
there's a Twitter account that is just called Liza Minnelli has lived longer than, or something like that, and it's just people tweeting whenever like a celebrity or anybody dies or like a regime ends or something. It's like Liza Minnelli has outlasted whatever this thing is.
Yeah, she's good, though. I mean, I think the most notably for me is Arrested Development.
Yeah,
She's fantastic in that. But she's had a long fucking career, man.
definitely.
Anyway, there you go. REGOTs, we all tied. Way to go, guys. That's, 3 weeks straight?
Yeah,
Yeah, been a good season for trivia.
It's crazy.
we'll
Low
get a little.
stress.
We'll keep up with this for a little bit, and then we'll get a little fresh blood in here to make it real again.
What does that mean?
Knife fight.
Yeah.
Right on, great. Well, we're going to take a little break. You might get some ads, you might not. And then we're going to get started with our main discussion about 7 Stephen King movies.
Yeah.
Join the Creep Cult. $5 a month at patreon.com/Porcelain Peak for exclusive content, merch discounts, and more. Join the Creep Cult. $5 a month at patreon.com/Porcelain Peak for exclusive content, merch discounts, and more.
Hey, you want to see something really scary?
Chicken to China, the Chinese chicken. You have a drumstick and your brain starts ticking. Watching X-Files with no lights on. I don't know the next word.
Of
And
that
something about a
song?
cigarette smoking man.
Hey, but the ice cream drumsticks are hella good, right?
You know they discontinued the Choco Taco.
Why? Is that true? Why?
Cultural appropriation.
What?
Yeah, because of.
But the Great British Bake Off can still do Mexican Week?
People were fucking livid about some of the shit on the like the internet was like, holy crap.
Really?
Like,
No,
yeah,
he's
because
not
apparently
lying.
British people don't understand
Mexican?
Mexican culture, like Mexico as a place.
Oh, yeah, well...
Just like shaving I almost said shaving a guacamole. I don't understand the culture either. Shaving an avocado.
That's gotta be. That's
David.
No, that's what I'm saying is they're not supposed to do that.
That's gotta be up
And
there
that's
with
what they're
slurping your muddy buddies. You gotta just shave
yeah.
a guacamole.
I heard it was like cringe funny.
Yeah.
Crunny.
But I was like, whatever.
I've just always wondered why they do everything in a tent in that show.
To make it intense. Anyway,
like camping.
welcome back. We're getting started with our main discussion, continuing our 31 Terror Tale. Chain Rock,
Ooh, Chain Rock, Chain Rock.
Right.
Stephen King. Spooky, spooky.
This week we decided to watch 7 Stephen King movies. They are It Chapter 1 from the most recent, Misery, Needful Things, Christine, 89 Pet Cemetery, The Dead Zone movie, and 1408.
You know, we watched all 6 seasons of the Dead Zone TV show with Anthony Michael Hall.
I'm just being clear. All right.
In his typical fashion of
Yeah.
our Terror Tales tradition, we are going to talk about 3 of these very in depth. We will talk about all 7 of them in some capacity, depending on how
You're
much we
giving
like
people
them.
like a magic carpet ride around the globe with all these accents you're using in today's episode.
I know, right?
Yeah, I can't keep track
You
of
don't
where
know
they're all
what
from.
any of
I don't.
Yeah,
Don't know what it means, but it's provocative.
It gets
Gets
the
the
people
people going.
Yeah, you're like Fez from that '70s show. You're like, I'm foreign, but you don't know exactly like what kind of foreign.
What are we highlighting? Misery,
Misery for me.
Christine, and
1408.
all right. So why don't we just go straight down the list and get started with It Chapter 1. This was a movie that had a lot of people excited. You and I got to see it in theaters together, which was fucking sold out.
It was
crazy.
It was an unbelievable trip
Yeah.
in general. I had just watched It Chapter 1, and then Adrian came over the other night, and we just happened to be talking about music festivals, and I was telling her about us going to the High and Low Fest in San Bernardino, and like the night before we went to the first day of that was when we went and saw It Chapter 1, and I was like, oh shit, these stories connect. But yeah, we had a great time because we went to that cool theater that had like the stairs.
Yeah.
Like, it was like a 2-story thing. And then, yeah, the theater was packed and people were jazzed about it and we were excited. And the movie was pretty awesome.
It was a
Yeah.
good experience in theaters, and I think that
This is before everything went to shit because of COVID and people forgot
Right.
the last little sliver of like decorum
Decency.
they had.
there's something about being in a crowd that is all scared and all very into what you're watching that just does it for me more than watching at home. I think even when we went and saw the first Conjuring movie, it was pretty packed, but everybody was just sucked in. And so then when there's the silence in the movies and you can feel and like hear people breathing but trying not to, it just does something for you, man.
You can hear the guy behind you just like cranking
Doing
it.
whippets.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I love how I've ruined the even the semblance of a possibility of a theater experience for everybody with my Whippet story.
pretty much, yeah. So this one, I initially thought it was pretty okay, and I feel like I like it less with every rewatch. Like, it's fine. It just doesn't do a ton for me.
I mean, I disagree. I watched
Go
it
ahead.
several times in theaters for
Yeah.
good reason. I feel like it captures so much more for me than Chapter 2 does because it's based around this group of kids.
Yeah,
and
they're
seeing
great.
scary things through the lens of children, especially when all of the child actors do a fantastic job. It just it works for me. I feel like it has that Goonies kind of quality, or like Stranger Things, the kids on bikes type feel.
Yeah, Amblin.
But just with like scares turned up to 10. And I feel like they try to turn the scares up to 11, but with the adults, it doesn't work in Chapter 2.
Yeah, and sometimes it hits and it lands, and I'm like, that's scary. But a lot of the time, not a lot of times, but some of the times, it's also really, really just goofy. Like when he pops out of the projector, that to me is really silly.
Yeah, but that doesn't ruin it for me because the movie isn't supposed to be like spine-tinglingly scary. It is a kids' adventure movie with a supernatural clown as the villain. And that I mentioned this to you guys in text, but I felt like I was having the same experience where I had just watched it so much over the years since it came out because I loved it so much when it first came out that I was rating it lower and lower each time I watched it because I was just so like I knew it like the back of my hand and I was getting bored of it. But on this most recent rewatch, I kind of took a step back and was like, no, this movie is really fucking good, and especially for a Stephen King adaptation. And it's funny that you mentioned the Stranger Things because we've talked about this before where it's like this weird loop that Stranger Things has done where they took so much inspiration from like Stephen King specifically. And then when a Stephen King thing comes out that feels like Stranger Things, you're like, okay, we're in this weird simulation, especially with Finn Wolfhard being
So funny, though.
one of the kids playing Richie in these movies. But yeah, I think every single one of the performances in this movie is fucking stellar. The kids all are top notch. Bill Skarsgård, I know a lot of people were nervous about the idea of this young kid playing Pennywise, but I would argue that unless you grew up with the TV series, this is the more popular Pennywise now. Like when people talk about Pennywise, this is the picture they draw or the image they post. And
Tim Curry isn't scary by comparison.
The image of Tim Curry with the really, really caked on like white makeup and like the teeth, like that shit. That one image is very scary.
Well, and I also think it's a
Pennywise
very
as a whole, and this is way more intimidating to me anyway.
Well,
Yeah.
and it's a very different Pennywise. Like the idea in the miniseries was more that he was an actually fun looking clown that looked like an everyday clown, and then he would suddenly shift. This Pennywise is very much like, you can tell there's something sinister about and like off about his design. He's very much based on like an old like Victorian era clown or whatever, and it's just more overtly creepy. But yeah, I think all the performances are great. The movie is shot gorgeously. The music is fantastic. There's a lot of emotion and some pretty creepy scenes, like when one of my favorites is when the burned kid is walking down the stairs toward Ben's character in the basement library, and there's like the top of the ceiling's blocking, and then when the kid comes down, he has no head and he's just dropping all the eggs, and then he's like, waddling after him, and then Pennywise just pops up and goes, "Egg boy." I was just like, tackle at that point. I love it. But yeah, I mean, this would be my pick out of all of these, probably, if it hadn't been talked to death by us and everybody else already, and if it wasn't so recent. But I love this movie. And I, like I said in text, I think the second one, every individual element I think is done excellently. It's just too much. Like, it just goes on for too long. But I
almost put it on after this, and I was like, I have 6 other movies I need to watch, and I don't really like that movie.
Yeah.
So I was like, I don't know. I can't invest, because these are both really long movies. They're 2+ hours, right?
Yeah, well, I know at least the second one is almost 3 hours long.
Yeah, it's like 2.5, 2:45,
yeah,
somewhere
so
in
I was
there.
like, I don't know.
But yeah, I mean, I would still recommend it if for whatever reason you haven't seen this movie. I've seen both this and the original miniseries several times now, and I think they're both great. I just love the story of it. I haven't read the book, and I know there's some really fucked up, weird elements in the book, but it's also like 10,000 pages long, so I can't say that I will ever get around to it. So the movies are going to have to do for now.
Yeah, no, I'm in the same boat. I enjoyed it, though, and I would watch it again. I don't know. I don't love it.
Well,
but I would recommend it.
Well, we're getting a prequel series for HBO called Welcome to Derry, about the origins of Pennywise. So
yeah, but wasn't he like created with the universe?
Yeah, with Maturin, the fucking turtle, all the way down. And
all right, so recommend from all of us?
Absolutely.
Good, yeah, check that out. That is on HBO Max and maybe Netflix. Next up, we got Misery.
Yeah, so I hadn't seen this movie in a little while. I saw it a lot when I was a kid, and it freaked me the fuck out. I was so terrified of Kathy Bates that I didn't like her as a person for pretty much all of my life until I realized that she was just a very talented actress who was able to terrify me in that way. And for this, I was more, you guys know me, I was scared of your crypt keepers and your decaying corpses and supernatural stuff. And for this movie to have scared me as much as it did when I was a kid, I think that's a good testament to how well made it is and how great the performances are. But this is directed by Rob Reiner. It is,
yeah. And if you watch it on HBO, then it has a little intro with him that's 8 minutes long, and I loved that.
Yeah, I definitely want to check out the Turner Classic Movies section of HBO to see if they've done that with a bunch of the other movies that they have on there. But
their Halloween section's really cool too, the way they break it down. HBO's kind of doing some fun stuff with their user interface.
Yeah. So yeah, directed by Rob Reiner, who also did Stand By Me, which I think is also a fantastic movie that a lot of people I think don't register immediately as a Stephen King thing.
Yeah, it's like a top 10 Stephen King adaptation.
Yeah. So this, like I said, stars Kathy Bates and Jimmy Caan, who I have even more respect for now after seeing him in The Godfather and seeing him in Elf. And
right, so this was kind of King's answer to wanting to not just do horror and get pigeonholed, right?
Yeah, because he, like a lot of his stories, he based a lot of this on his own experience. And in the story, Jimmy Caan's character is a writer who has mostly been writing sleazy Victorian romance books, the Misery series, which is just a fucking fantastic name for a person. I was like, if I ever have a kid, I'm going to name her Misery.
Mm-hmm.
So
and then you have to have a second kid.
For company, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm glad we're on the same page with that. So he's writing these books, and he has finally written a book that he feels he's going to kill off misery, and he's going to move on to a different genre, something that he's really passionate about writing, and that's something that King actually did. I think the movie is called the book is called The Eyes of the Dragon or something like that, and it's more of a romance period piece type story, so kind of the reverse of this. And people were fucking pissed that it wasn't the straightforward King horror stuff, and he was like, okay, I guess I'm trapped in doing this forever. And then something that
It's
is
made him fucking millions of dollars.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you don't know this movie, James Caan he finishes his book, he does his little smokes a cigarette, has a glass of Dom Perignon, and takes off into a blizzard that he doesn't know about, flips his car, and is rescued by his number one fan, Annie Wilkes, played absolutely brilliantly by Kathy Bates, especially for someone who was basically coming straight from the stage to her first movie.
Yeah, and one of the things Reiner talked about was like he was in TV shows, which I didn't realize that was him, and then wanted to make the jump to movies, and he was saying like that's not something that you could do. Like those were two very separate
It's
things.
so weird to think
It's
of now,
crazy.
where it's
exactly.
Nicole Kidman has a new TV show
time.
every month or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, people that it's like they're the same thing now. And TV has gotten a lot better, I think, maybe because of it. I don't know.
I would
There's
say, I
some
mean,
stuff
that's probably spurred along by things like HBO, you
Yeah.
know, and coming out with things like The Wire
Right.
and shit like that. I mean,
even streaming services where they're able to make these like cinematic pieces, like Flanagan stuff, like we talked about, could be a giant TV show.
Yeah, the money's
Or a
there now,
giant
and you can
movie.
build a
Yeah.
fan base with TV.
Anyway, yeah, she was relatively unknown, came into this and killed it, hobbled it.
said,
Help me, God me.
did she win an Oscar for this?
She did.
Yeah.
So also huge because she won for I think Best Actress for this movie, which is crazy because it's a horror movie and she's a woman. And I don't know if any other woman has won for a horror movie. I know other men have won awards for horror movies. Again, very rare. So yeah, people love her performance in this for good reason. I think that she is both adorable in this role at moments and then completely fucking terrifying and unhinged in other, and you never know when she's going to flip on a dime, and when she does, it doesn't feel forced. And the buildup of tension is just, I was on the edge of my seat, even though I've seen this before, thinking like, oh, how is he going to get out of this? How is he going to get out of this? And the process, because basically he finds out that she is his number one fan to the point that she's going to keep him prisoner. And when she finds out that he's going to kill off Misery,
Well, the book comes out.
What's that? Yeah.
Misery's Child comes out.
Well, she reads the book and she's like,
Yeah.
yeah. So she reads the book and is like, you killed Misery? Oh my God. You're going to write something that brings her back to life. And I guess Stephen King had actually based this concept around the character from 1001 Arabian Nights or 1001 Nights, because the framing device, that's where like stories like Aladdin come from. Aladdin. The framing device of that is a king. His wife, I guess, like cheats on him or something. He has her executed, and then he decides that he's going to marry like a new virgin woman every day and then behead her the next day. So then this woman comes up with this plan where she will offer to tell him a story, and then she leaves each of the stories on a cliffhanger so that he keeps her alive to the next day. And that's how she gets through 1001 tales. And then by the time she gets to the end of it, she's like, okay, I've ran out of tales. You can kill me. And by that point, he's fallen in love with her, and he decides to keep her as his wife and keep her alive. And that's that whole thing. And obviously parallels what
manipulation, man.
Yeah, what the character in this is supposed to be doing. But Rob Reiner talks about how he basically watched every Hitchcock movie so that he could get a sense, as someone who didn't really do horror or thriller movies, so he could get a sense of how to shoot one of these. And I think you can see that he was very, very inspired by Hitchcock.
Very Hitchcock.
And
totally.
Yeah, to the point where James Caan would say that he would overhear Reiner like getting mad at himself, like, who the fuck you think you are, Alfred Hitchcock? Like, you're not Alfred Hitchcock, like to himself, like, because he was getting pissed about like a scene. This was also shot by Barry Sonnenfeld, who went on to do things like Men in Black and Addams Family.
That was cool.
Yeah, and I guess in order to show James Caan like where his marks were on the hardwood floor to like crawl around when he's trying to escape the bed, he would just spit onto the floor, like to show where the marks were going to be. Just really weird stuff. But I guess there was some animosity between Caan and Bates because she was very used to long rehearsal periods because she was coming from the stage. And he was like, I want to do as literal rehearsal as possible, and I just want to go straight into it. And so they had to like kind of compromise in between. And Rob Reiner just said, okay, you're pissed at him, you're annoyed at him, use that in your performance, like when you really freak out at him. And it helped.
You can see it. I mean, a lot of it feels authentic. And what I love about Caan's performance is he's such an ass the whole time from the beginning. Everything he says to her, and then at one point he just like flips her off, and she's like, "Oh, you're fooling," and their dynamic, it works so perfectly. He said that was it Warren Beatty,
yeah,
wanted to do it originally, but I mean, I got to give it to Khan on this one.
Every big actor that you've ever heard of was considered for this role, and then every big actress. I think the main contenders were Bette Midler, who turned it down because she thought it was silly, and then has since said that she horribly regrets not taking the Annie Wilkes role. Angelica Houston was up for it, and I could see any of these people being great in that role. But Kathy Bates, I think, being fresh on the scene, like she was, and being stage trained,
it's just transcendent.
Yeah, I could see why this went on to be a successful play with Bruce Willis and Laurie Metcalf, the writer of this of the movie. Bruce Willis didn't get praise for his performance, but Laurie Metcalf did, and I can definitely see her as Annie Wilkes, especially like thinking of her in Scream 2.
You know what part fucked me up? Buster. Is it Buster? No, what's his name? Is it Buster in this? No, I'm thinking of Needful Things.
Yeah, Buster's
what's the guy's name
Things.
though?
The cop?
Yeah.
I don't know, but I love him.
Yeah. I was the whole time I was like, I love you. And then when
him and his wife, every scene with them, I was busting up, and they felt so natural. Like all of their dialogue, like when he's talking to her, and he's like, like that spice, like that sarcasm, like that's what's made our marriage last so long. And they have this thing where like they always talk like they fucking hate each other, but you can tell they like deeply love each other, and they end up helping each other on the investigation.
When you're in this car, you're my deputy. It's like I'd rather be in the sheets with the sheriff.
Yeah, I love that. It reminded me of how like it reminded me a lot of how the like Poltergeist couple feels, where they're just like smoking weed in bed and like chatting and laughing, and they feel very like a real natural couple.
Yeah, so when he got, I was like, oh,
well,
my
it reminded me
God.
of The Shining, which is not something that happens in the book, but in Kubrick's Shining, how the Doc Halloran character, like you're like sympathizing for him. He's like, yeah, I'm gonna go save him, and then he just gets an axe to the
yeah, that was brutal, and I was like, oh fuck, dude, I was not expecting that.
Well, and then like you can't get more tense than like the scene when Khan finally like gets in the wheelchair and gets out of the room, and he is like going through and finding her stash of like opiates and stuff, and then when he hears that she's coming home, and he's like wheeling through the house and like trying to get back to where he was and closing all the right doors and everything, and she still fucking figures out that he was out. That scene when when he went through all that fucking work to get the drugs into her drink, and then she spills it. And then when she wakes him up that night and she's like, I found your lockpick, and my little like doll statuette was like facing the wrong direction. It always faces north or whatever. It's terrifying.
Yeah.
And because Warren Beatty worked on it for so long, basically the way they did rewriting the script was he was like, pretend that I, Warren Beatty, an intelligent, sensible man, was in this situation, and I was doing literally everything I could think of to get out of it. And she was like, and every attempt fails. And so like we got to make sure that like the audience isn't going, run bitch, do this, like do that. And of course the easy way to do that was, I mean, he's horribly mangled and injured for most of it, and then when he does start to heal, you get the iconic terrifying hobbling scene where she
and you only get to see the one side, and it's for a fucking split second, and
it's just
that's all you need.
Yeah, it's enough. Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, welcome to Scarred. Yeah, when his ankle's like,
yeah.
But in the book, she chops his entire foot off. And she also chops his thumb off at one point when he's like fucking up on the writing. And that was the scene that the producer fought. It's the reason he wanted to make the movie was the hobbling scene from the book. And Reiner was like, no, we can't have her cut his foot off because we don't want the audience to be so mortified that they completely lose any semblance of sympathy for the Annie Wilkes character. Like, we still need her to be somebody that they can kind of feel some sort of sympathy for. And even at the end when she gets her brains bashed, and you're like, okay, she deserves it. Like, she's horrible, but you still feel sorry for her because she's obviously deluded. Like,
there's backstory that we don't 100% get, right? Where she, I think, got left, right? Her husband completely left her. I think she has a daughter at some point. I don't know if that's just coming from the Castle Rock.
She's been driven to her breaking point.
But yeah, and so there's sadness behind them eyes. And so I think that's a good point. Like, you are, like, you're not rooting for her, but you also are like, I feel for you, lady.
Yeah.
Yeah, couple tidbits from the book that I wanted to bring up that I thought were interesting that I would have made. I wouldn't have liked to see them in this movie because I think it works perfectly the way it is, and the changes they made were totally worth it. But in the book, one of the big subplots is that Khan's character was an addict, and he is in recovery. And then when she starts giving him the Novril or whatever, he becomes horribly addicted to it because it's an opiate. And so a lot of like what he does is driven by her withholding painkillers from him to like torture him and stuff. And because he's addicted,
He becomes dependent on her.
he becomes dependent on her. And you kind of see that a little bit when he's pretending to like beg, like, oh, I'm in so much pain, I need my pills. I guess that's more of what the character was actually like in the book. And it's because this was one of the first books that King wrote after becoming sober. And to him, Annie Wilkes was the embodiment of his addiction, and the idea that like no matter what he tried to do to escape it, it would find some way to hobble him and keep him where he was. And so again, it's, you know, if you read the book, it's got this whole other personal layer to it. And then the other thing that I wanted to mention is that this location in Colorado is supposed to be very close to the Overlook Hotel, like in terms of like where in Colorado.
In like the story?
In the
or-
books, like, because these
okay,
don't all share a universe in the movies, but in the shared Stephen King universe, it's mentioned that the Overlook Hotel is like nearby.
That's cool.
Yeah. So, but I fucking love this movie, and I think it's perfect.
Yeah,
I watched it when I was younger, and I was like, that was fine. And I wanted to give it benefit of the doubt this time going in, and I was like, oh, what was I thinking? Like, yeah, this movie's good.
I've been trying to say them shits for years, my guy.
I'm sorry, John.
Misery is one of my favorite Stephen King adaptations. It's probably somewhere in my top 20 horror movies of all time, probably. It is just so perfectly crafted, so beautifully acted. And I personally, I agree with the decision to go with the sledgehammer instead of the axe in this case. But I almost feel like it's more gruesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like
agree.
the finale, like, boom, it's gone.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, sure, that fucking
like,
sucks.
Like,
but
oh, there's no fixing them shits.
Well,
but,
when she, but with her breaking the ankles, it's like, okay, if he's there for another year or whatever, she'll just come and do it again.
Yeah.
Like when they heal.
Yeah.
And they could heal all fucked up and cockeyed and weird. Yeah, it's brutal. Yeah, and then her whole death, and then the idea that, because at the end of the book, it's also way darker, because when he finally gets out, he's like completely destroyed as a person.
He's broken,
he's still addicted. Like, he's struggling with that. He's missing a foot and a thumb. He's got PTSD, and he doesn't actually burn the real manuscript of the new Misery book. He goes on to publish it, and and one of the critics of the book was saying that it's because he felt like at the end of the day, Stephen King had become resigned to the fact that he would be trapped writing these kind of books forever. And so he ended the story with Paul Sheldon also being trapped in that and going like, well, even after all this, I'm still publishing another Misery book, and it's wildly popular, and I'm going to be trapped this way. This has still a dark ending where he sees this was the scariest scene to me, when he sees her, like, and he's imagining that she's everywhere, and he's kind of does that thing. He's like, yeah, I still think about her sometimes, and they're asking him to write a book about his experience, and he's like, yeah, no thanks. But in this, he's moved on to write a very successful new book in a different genre.
Yeah,
so a little bit more positive in that respect.
Yeah, I think that's probably Reiner's touch there.
Mm-hmm.
So, recommend from you?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, I think recommend from all of us.
5 out of 5 cock-a-doodle stars.
Yeah.
I can't go to the Christen Bank or whatever the fuck she says. Anyway.
Oh, so last thing I want to say real quick. The speech when she's going on and on about the cliffhangers, and like, I love when she's talking about like, that's not what happened last week. Like, they didn't get it out of the cock-a-doodle car. I just love that whole bit. Anyway.
Yeah, she's a stickler for those details.
Yep.
And I liked the little detail that the N was missing. And so then when it zooms in on the text, you can see that it's like A blank D.
Yeah.
So I was writing it, and I'm like, that was good details. Anyway, next up is Needful Things. This one based off Stephen King. And it has Pangburn.
Yeah.
Which we talked about last week with the Dark Half.
Yeah, I think it was Steven filled me in on the detail that, because I was kind of curious, like, okay, they're the same character. Which order do these take place in the life of Pangborn? Because I was like, you can't go through what happens in Needful Things and then do the Dark Half stuff and not completely
be like,
fucked
what?
up. Yeah. So yeah, Dark Half is the first story with Pangborn, and then this is the next one.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So we watched them in the right order by accident.
By accident, yeah.
But it makes sense for him to be more open to the weird supernatural shit after having experienced that.
Yeah, and then also, at least in the books, because he has a wife and kids in the Dark Half, the book at least, and then by the time Needful Things comes around, they've all died in like a car accident, and so he's like way internally fucked up. They don't explore that as much in the movies, but yeah, it was Michael Rooker in the dark half, and now it's the same character but played by Ed Harris.
There you go.
I almost said Ed O'Neill. That would have been a different movie.
Yeah, so basically this man comes into town very similar to Something Wicked This Way Comes, but instead of like a carnival, it is a shop.
It's a Max von Sydow.
Yeah, and then you go to the shop,
good.
and they give you what you want, but it comes at a price. It kind of makes you deranged, and then he's sort of like, what's that? What are those machines called? Like the Rube
Goldberg.
Rube Goldberg's like people into destroying themselves. And it's like, you do this and you do this.
Yeah, so I was kind of under the impression that this was more like he gives them the object, and then it was kind of like what we saw in Something Wicked This Way Comes, where it's like, oh, the woman who is obsessed with her youth and beauty, she gets it, but she goes blind. And this was, I was surprised
Like
at
a
how
gift
much
of the
more,
Magi kind of situation.
Yeah, where it's like there's some immediate twist to what it is that they get.
Careful what you wish for,
Careful
Dana.
yeah, and but instead it was more like you said, this like crazy convoluted, like this person's going to pull up because I need you to do a prank or whatever, and so they pull a prank on this person, and then they misconstrue
Here's
it.
some turkey shit on
He's
these
taking
fucking
advantage.
sheets, damn it.
Yeah, he's taking advantage of what he finds to be this like vulnerable town of people who already kind of have beef with each other.
Very
and
like
he's
Twilight
like preying
Zone.
on their. Yeah, it felt very much Monsters Are Due on Maple Street.
Yeah, exactly. So that was cool. It's fine.
I liked it.
I liked it enough.
Max's performance is fantastic.
Yeah, so I think that
It's very creepy.
Yeah.
yeah, I mean Sidow's always great, and then I actually think Ed Harris is really good in this movie, especially when he gives his big speech at the end to the town where he's like, "What the fuck are you doing?
Yeah.
Like this isn't us." Like I think that for such a talented actor who maybe didn't need to go as hard as he does in this movie, he gives a really good performance. Like I love when he comes in after the kid tries to shoot himself, and he's like,
Ooh, that was
so
crazy,
distraught
dude.
about like
Yeah.
I just this kid almost killed himself, and then he's like, it's I always love when the adult like goes, okay, like this kid was right, and this guy is a monster, and now I got to convince everybody else. But other than that, it is pretty goofy. It does
And it's
feel very
also
TV
chaotic.
movie.
There's so much going on.
There's some paranoia that I think works.
Well, and I always like a good mob
mentality.
mentality movie, unless it's in the Halloween franchise. And but this did feel very much
Max
like
von Sydow dies tonight.
I kept thinking
Pretty
that somebody
much.
was going to say Evil Dies Tonight during it, but
I compared it to like an episode of Jerry Springer where he's like, "What don't you like? Oh, you don't like blacks and Mexicans? Well, we just happen to have some blacks and Mexicans." He was like, "It's crazy." He just it's just like Fight Club.
yeah, and I always love a good creepy open-ended thing where it's like, I don't want to completely spoil what happens, but kind of the idea that he may or may not be the devil. He kind of talks about how he's been doing this for many, many hundreds of, if not thousands of years, and then will potentially continue to do it in the future with other towns.
Yeah, it was kind of sad that dude blew himself up trying to take him out, and then he just was like, "Hey, what's up?"
Yeah, I think that's the thing about the movie is that, like you said, it's convoluted, like, and especially since it's hard to keep track of who everybody is because they're just kind of all thrown at you, and it's like, here's their relationship, and here's who doesn't like.
Some of them
and-
look sort of similar because it's in that era where a lot of people just kind of copied the same hairstyle and shit. I mean,
Yeah,
I know
and
we
it's all
kind of do
white
that now,
people,
but
yeah.
there's no culture. There's no culture.
Yeah,
much.
I just kept expecting, what is it, Amanda Plummer, the one from Pulp Fiction, to be like, if any one of you is motherfuckers. It's like,
That is her. Huh?
yeah, from the beginning of Pulp Fiction. Yeah,
Weird. Yeah. Honey Bunny.
Yeah.
yeah,
That's funny.
Christopher Plummer's daughter.
Oh, okay.
Christopher Plummer, who looks sort of like Max von
Dude,
Sydow.
well, no, I thought it was him. And I was like, "Is that him?" And I was like, "That's not him," because I feel like they do look similar.
Yeah.
There's also a really great line about someone stealing a Robert Louis Stevenson book, which I thought was fucking hilarious.
Yeah, I was like, you'd kill somebody if they stole your first edition.
The
Yeah,
first edition. It was fine. I wouldn't say don't watch it. If you're into Stephen King and you're into kind of this be careful what you wish for idea, then it's worth a watch.
There's a 3-hour cut that apparently was only released in like Germany or some shit that was basically a made-for-TV version of this, where the aspect ratios changed. It goes from widescreen to 4:3. And it's 3 hours long because it was broken out as a miniseries because it was in that weird territory where most King projects either came out as a theater release within the hour and a half to 2 hour window, or as a mini series in 2 to 3 parts.
Well, it's because
Right.
2/3 of the movie were in those spaces up here. So when they had it in, widescreen like this, you didn't get all that movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when they put it back in,
Both
it's 3 hours
versions
long.
are available on YouTube if you haven't seen it and you are interested. You said that the 3-hour one is supposed to add a little bit more to it.
Character development. It's supposed to make some of the chaos seem a little less chaotic.
Yeah, but if you want to get the gist of this story, go watch the Rick and Morty episode. Something Wicked This Way Comes.
All right, let's move into one from the Masters and one from the King, and that is Christine. This one is
So good.
directed by John Carpenter.
That's why it's called John Carpenter's Christine.
There you go. Yeah, sometimes it
John
is.
Carpenter, Stephen King's Christine.
So if you don't know,
But that's a real quick player move, because Stephen King shit is always like, we got to do Stephen King's, whatever it is, and
Yeah.
Carpenter's like, no, it's John Carpenter's Christine.
John Carpenter's Christine. Yes, if you don't know, this is about a car that kills people.
A dope ass car, by the
A
way.
dope ass car that kills people. Yeah, and this guy's nerdy friend gets the car and then becomes this cool guy. And then the car is like, love me and don't love anybody else, and kind of changes his personality. A lot is not explored in this, and I think it works. Like, we never really understand why the car changes the personality. We never really understand how the car is possessed, which is something that
We just get it
comes
off.
up in the story, the book, about
Yeah.
like it being possessed by the souls of its previous owners.
Yeah.
I mean, we just get it. We get a really cool scene where it literally coming off the factory line is already taking body counts.
Right? Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. A little cheesy.
But still a great way.
I loved it, 'cause
It
I was like, this is
perfectly
badass.
introduces
Yeah.
what the
Right.
movie's going to be.
and
like.
the tone and the
And Carpenter, in part, does the music for this one. I guess they released the soundtrack with just like the score, but then also the music in the movie is fantastic. So then
Yeah.
they released a second one with everything.
yeah.
I'd buy that on vinyl.
Yeah.
I think it works so beautifully. The juxtaposition between these, it's the thing that's become so overdone now, where it's like, play an oldies song and put it in a creepy scene, and then it immediately becomes 10 times more creepy. So there's a lot of that done where it's like a fun love song or whatever, but to some scary thing that Christine is doing, stalking a dude or whatever.
Yeah,
but
and
then
it
you have
really-
it juxtaposed with this classic throbbing John Carpenter synth that comes through, and I
Yeah.
think you wouldn't think those things would work together, but they work beautifully, especially since the synth is more saved for the eerie Christine scenes.
Well, I think it plays into kind of the overall feel of the movie too, because the movie does have this weird 50s feel with the oldies in general, the car, some of the styling of the characters, right? But then it is still like a late 70s, early 80s movie. So then the synth makes sense.
Well,
and
it
then
even
the
makes-
other characters make sense.
Yeah, it even makes who ends up eventually becoming kind of like our main character stand out more, because as he kind of changes his personality, he starts to dress more like that 50s kind of like
Fonz
It's
and-
a
yeah,
gre-
like
he's a
Happy
greaser.
Days kind of
Yeah.
shit. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess Carpenter, they wanted Carpenter originally, and he was like, I don't know about that. And then the projects that he was trying to get off the ground fell through. So,
Firestarter.
Yeah, Firestarter, that's
Yeah.
right. And then he was like, all right, I'll do it. And I guess at the time he just thought of it as like a job. He's like, yeah, it's just a job.
Well, and most people who went in to work on this before they actually read the story, you hear the concept like, oh, it's a killer car, and you're like, that sounds dumb as shit. Like, it
Yeah.
sounds like a B movie.
Right.
And the fact that they were able to pull it off to be as interesting and creepy and
Literally iconic.
yeah,
It's one of Mrs. Jigsaw's favorite horror films.
Yeah, and I want to get the effects person's name right.
well, and the good thing about this is like if you're not a big fan of like crazy gore or whatever, like this movie doesn't really bring that to the table.
It does pull some of those punches, but I mean, and part of that, I mean, as he's about to mention, a lot of that because of the effects work really goes into bringing this car to life in such a crazy way.
So the effects were by Roy Arbogast, who also worked on The Thing and They Live with Carpenter.
Oh, nice.
And, I think the Thing effects speak for themselves. Am I
Yes.
right? Yeah, so, I mean, one of the most iconic scenes from this is the car rebuilding itself.
Okay.
And I wanted to talk a
me.
little bit about that. Yeah, I love that, right? Because you don't really know what's happening. Like, I knew because I know the movie.
Yeah.
But if you're just watching for the first time, like, what the fuck's happening?
Because
And
he has
line,
he has that
weird
like
whisper.
gradual, like you can tell that he's gradually starting to change. Like I noticed it a lot more too because I knew where the movie was going. But in the beginning, he's got like the thick glasses with the tape, and he's like stomping through the puddle to get his lunch, and he's being all clumsy. And then like after he gets Christine, it's not like he's suddenly a cool greaser. It's just he starts being a little bit more standoffish with his parents and his friends. And then the more time he's spending with Christine, the more he's starting to kind of like have this mental connection with her and treating her like a woman. So yeah, when he does that scene where he's like, okay, show me, like it's like he's talking to Christine, like and then you get the amazing like he's in shadow and then the headlights just and then the Carpenter like beat drops, and then you get the amazing practical effects, which I guess they did with hydraulic
and plastic
like to pull everything in and then reverse the shot.
So I knew it was reversed, but I thought it was still like just a car that they just reversed. But so Roy, he put they made a completely plastic shell of Christine, made it look like metal, and then used the pumps to pull it all in, and then reverse that. I was like, that's fucking brilliant, and that is a testament to practical effects, but also it just shows you how that stuff can still hold up, because you watch that now. And if I wouldn't have read that, I'm like, how did they do that? I assumed it was reversed, but I never would have thought plastic hydraulics.
Well, it still breaks my brain watching it because I'm like, this looks like incredible CGI, and knowing that it's not CGI and that it's for real.
Something real that you could have touched if you were on set that day.
Yeah, it's wild.
Also, just a very like spooky reveal that the car can do that, because then it becomes, this movie also I think is the closest thing that Carpenter, besides Halloween 2, made to Halloween, because the car is very like this unstoppable force.
Yeah, there are scenes from this where I was like, that feels like it could have been pulled from Halloween or put into Halloween.
Well, and then he even has what I said was the coolest scene in a movie that I've ever seen, when Christine just viciously attacks this, like rams this guy's car into this station until it explodes and kills everybody inside, and then the one other dude is like, oh fuck this, and takes off, and then you just get like the Carpenter music. It's dark, it's just the headlights on the road with the flames coming out of the car,
so
and then
good.
Very in the mouth of madness.
And then she's not. Lynch does that a lot, where it's just the headlights on a dark road or whatever, or like a car's going down a dark road. There's a Radiohead music video that's that too, but and it's just slow. Might have been inspired by this movie actually, because in the video I think the car is just slowly chasing after a guy. And the car just Michael Myers level, just on fire, stalks the guy. And then
it's brilliant. The contrast between the pitch black night and the flames is gorgeous.
Yeah, and there's with the music. And then with Christine pulling into the garage after just plumes of smoke, and the owner of the garage is just like, what the fuck? And then like goes to, and then there's that whole thing. But also something that I wanted to point out is, I fucking love the casting in this movie, especially for like all of the side characters. I think is it Darrell or whoever the garage owner.
Yeah.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, it's Darrell.
I recognize him from Mrs. Doubtfire. He's the TV producer guy that Robin Williams gets that job from when he's playing with the dinosaurs.
Right on.
But he's fantastic.
Such a
the guy who
dirtbag.
plays like the brother of the owner, of the previous owner of Christine. It kind of explains a little bit about
I think that was the dude from the car.
Yeah, he looks kind of like him. Yeah,
that's that guy.
Yeah, I just think that all of the side characters, like especially,
I think even the main cast is really good. The only one I didn't really like is like the bully dude, because I was like, you are definitely in your late 20s.
Yeah.
Everybody else, I could suspend the disbelief here, but like, you're pushing it.
I mean, he could be just being held back that many times. I mean, he's the kind of guy who brings a switchblade to school and gets expelled.
Yeah, but it was the 70s, man. 70s, man.
But a lot
if
of
you didn't have
classic
switchblades.
A lot of classic King elements there, where you got like the person who's being picked on by all the bullies, and then it's Carrie basically, because then he gets the power to take revenge on the bullies. Basically, the only difference here is more that it seems, you're never 100% sure how much is it Arnie the main character, how much he has to do with what Christine's doing. Like if he's just thinking like, oh, I wish these guys were dead, and then Christine goes and gets revenge, or if Christine is completely autonomous and is just like, fuck these guys, I'm gonna go get revenge for Arnie. Because
that's what it is to me, because she doesn't do it until they destroy her.
Yeah.
Right? Because, I mean, I'm sure he hated those guys already. And
so they make it seem that way.
I don't know, yeah.
For part of the film, and they keep everything very mysterious, and I think part of that is supposed to be because of the reveal in like the final showdown at Darrell's garage that he's in the car. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's supposed to lend a little credence at least to the fact that he is partially culpable during these. I
guess we really don't know if it's empty.
We know that it was empty in the fire, because when it comes back, there's no one in the car, and that's how Darrell dies.
And it was fucking on fire.
Yeah. But like the first killing, which is gruesome and is also a very iconic scene where the car squeezes itself into that tiny little hallway and smashes him up against the trash can.
You feel like the car has a personality. Like, you feel like it's alive. It's crazy. Also a gorgeous fucking car. And I guess they had to get like 20. They got like 24 of them from all over the place. Carpenter put out a bunch of ads for basically like the closest models to that car that they could retrofit, and they had like their stunt versions and their like glam versions for when it's just sitting there looking great. And they were able to take them apart and go down to I think 17 movie cars, and by the end of it, I think they had 2 cars left.
Yeah,
they had to destroy so many for different things,
such
like
a
starting them on
beautiful
fire
car,
and crushing them with bulldozers and
sometimes I watch movies, I'm like, how wasteful is the movie industry?
Very. The answer is very. We picked up on something that I Googled this, and I could not find a single other person on the face of the earth.
It 100% is. It's the same sound, though.
Yeah, when he's trying to start Christine after Christine is upset that he may have like made up with Lee. The girl that he is going out with.
Gorgeous.
Yeah.
It makes the
drop dead. It makes a noise when he's trying to start it, and I picked up on it and was like, oh, I must just be tripping. Like I thought I heard the Texas Chainsaw noise, and then you mentioned it, so I was like, oh, this must be in the IMDb trivia. I Googled it, every combination of like Christine, Texas Chainsaw, like everything, and I'm sure other people have noticed it. If you had noticed that before listening to this episode, let us know. But I thought it was a cool little
Easter egg.
Yeah, random reference to.
I mean, they could. I mean, we know that Carpenter and Hooper have a relationship.
I mean, they work together on Body Bags.
Yeah, so why not? Why not throw a little?
Maybe it was a little thing.
Here you go, Tobe. Or maybe Toby was like, "What's up, bro? I saw you did that. You want to make a movie?"
The scene where Lee chokes in the car too.
Oh, and the lights get super bright inside.
Oh
yeah.
This movie just it is so
weird. Yeah.
has so many iconic scenes.
I'd never seen it before. This is my first watch. Was this your first experience with it?
Oh, this is my second time.
Okay.
This is one of the movies that I grew up with. I may have seen this before I saw Halloween.
I honestly thought it was a silly premise.
I think most people do, and then they go into it and they're like, "Oh, this makes up for how silly the premise might be with so much style that it's ridiculous." Like the fact that they used like I think it was 12-volt batteries, one in the trunk and one in the front, to get the lights to be as bright as they were. So those headlights are just like completely blinding.
Yeah.
For me, top 5 of Carpenter's movies, easy.
Yeah, it's one of my favorites, and I think I said to you, outside of Halloween, I think this is my favorite Carpenter score. And then combine that with obviously all of the licensed music. Yeah. And I would love to own this. I'll have to look for it. On vinyl, I'm sure there's a cool like cherry red version of this on vinyl that exists. A little bit
John
of
Halfchub.
Yeah, a little bit of trivia that I wanted to throw your guys' way. Do you know where the name Christine comes from? Why the car is named that? In like where King got the inspiration? Time's up. It's George Romero's wife, Christine Romero, because George and Steven were working on Creepshow together. Oh. And George, his wife would be on set, and King came up with the idea while they were to write Christine while they were working on Creepshow, and she just happened to be there, and he was like, "That would be a great name for the car," and named it Christine. And I thought that was another little. My voice keeps doing a weird thing. It was a nice little connection between these horror directors.
I also like the
writers.
Cliffhanger ending. Mm-hmm. We get the little.
I love the fake out first with
the
boombox. Yeah. It's such a good scene. I was like, Carpenter, you fucking around, aren't you?
Yeah.
But with like the radio playing songs that are like kind of her trying to speak, I told him, I was like, because apparently there's a Christine remake that's in the works.
Yes, it's supposed to be directed by and written by David Fuller, who did The Hannibal Show. He's working on Star Trek Discovery, I think. Pushing Daisies, Dead Like Me. I mean, he's got some notoriety. He just worked on, it's on Shudder now, Queer for Fear.
Oh, yeah.
Queer horror documentary. So he just worked on that. I mean,
Brian Fuller?
What did I say?
I think he said David Fuller.
Oh.
That's why I was confused at first.
Brian
but
Fuller.
Yeah.
Is what I meant. Whatever I said.
Yeah. I told him that they already made a remake, and it was the movie that changed the world in 2007 called Michael Bay's Transformers. Because the whole beginning of this movie is basically
like
beat for beat, exactly Shia LaBeouf and Bumblebee. Bumblebee!
It doesn't need to be remade. I think that it's a movie that has stood the test of time.
Yeah, and what are they going to do? It's just going to be CG car?
Yeah, I'm not interested.
CG car. I mean, yeah, for the repairing stuff, but like they just get it to be CG.
CG all the
Literally
time.
every scene, like just parked there, and I'm like, what? You're like, why is it all CG? They got Andy Serkis to motion capture Christine. Andy Serkis is
The
Christine.
Wheelers. He's like the Wheelers. I would watch it though.
Well, I mean, it's just like you got it. I don't think that the reason this doesn't need to be remade is because it's already teetering so close on being silly that, again, just Carpenter's style and the way he shoots this movie makes a potentially silly concept good. And I haven't read the book, so I'm sure there's a lot of what Stephen King wrote that makes this work also. But that's also the thing with King adaptations is he's a great idea man for books, but a lot of the best adaptations
Come from auteurs.
And that they trim down some of the needless things that are in the books and make them more streamlined. I mean, obviously the most overt example of going off book is The Shining, and obviously I'm a fan, but we're not talking about that this week.
We're not talking about that, but let's go ahead and move into our next one. Christine recommends for everybody?
100%.
100%, yeah. All right, Pet Cemetery. I did not get to finish this one this week, so you guys will have to take the reins.
Pet Cemetery.
Hit us with it, John.
Don't go down to that old pet cemetery here, but I'm going to show you this pet cemetery here.
Let me let you bury your kid here, and then you gonna kill me.
Yeah, I hadn't seen this movie until the remake was about to come out, and I decided to watch the original in comparison. I also read the book. I haven't read too many Stephen King books, but this one is on the shorter side, and I think it's one of...
I've only read 2.
Pet Cemetery 2?
No. The Stephen King books?
Oh.
Those two.
And I think it's probably... It's one of my favorite Stephen King stories. Mm-hmm. It's a zombie movie, but like in a way that you wouldn't really think of because there's so much more going on.
Yeah.
Because really it's a movie about how people deal with death, the lengths that fathers and men will go to protect their families, but really in the end it's to protect themselves from having to confront the horrors of having children die, having patients die, and all this kind of stuff. And the Lewis, the main character, is like, oh, sweet, I can bring these people back to life. That's dope. I'm going to do that. And then things don't go exactly the way he intended. And I think that Herman Munster is fantastic as
Judd. They don't
Neighbor.
come back the same.
So, was it your first experience with it, or what's your experience with Pet
No.
Cemetery?
I've seen Pet Cemetery a handful of times. For me, it's one of the middle of the road adaptations where I'm not mad that I'm watching it, but I'm not like gonna go screaming from the mountaintops that this is the greatest movie that's ever been put to celluloid.
It's no The Mist. Is what you're saying?
I mean, The Mist is a great film.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's not that.
Yeah, it's not that.
It's not that, and it's not Thinner.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I don't think there's like anything super wrong with it. I think the story itself, like you said, is very well put together.
Yeah.
And like it has some great scenes. It's not a super clean adaptation. And then from what I've heard, the remake has like the exact same problem.
The remake is awful because it basically just takes the deeper elements of this movie and then removes them and then just changes elements just for the sake of changing them, and it doesn't do anything to contribute to the story. And I think one of the main problems about this movie is that outside of Fred Gwynne, Judd, there aren't really any memorable performances in this. Like, everybody is pretty boring.
It's a Gage,
and the little kid who plays Gage is excellent.
It's just that I can see the face with like the stitches and just the. I'm like, ugh, creepy kids.
And there's some standout scary scenes. I think a lot of people were scarred by the Zelda thing. She's got spina bifida or something, like where it's the whole flashback thing. I don't know if you got far enough in the movie, but the main character's wife, she had a sister who had this like horrible illness where she was like pretty much like emaciated and terrifying looking, and it's why the wife can't deal with death is because she grew up with like a terminally ill sister who she had to take care of. And so there's a lot of like way deeper things. And then you have the Judd character, his wife passes away in the book, and there's a lot more growth to that friendship, and you understand more why like a lot of people make fun of the movie and that like they're like, okay, why would if if Judd knows that the pet cemetery is like a bad thing that you shouldn't do, why does he show Lewis the pet cemetery in the first place as an option? And in the book, it makes more sense because he really deeply understands the grief that Lewis is going through.
He's like, here, I'll hand you this opportunity. I'm going to tell you, in my personal experience, you shouldn't use it, but here's the option if you have to.
Yeah, and I think Judd getting like the Achilles heel slashed toward the end is pretty brutal. Again, ties into that whole like the cutting thing that drives me nuts. But I think Fred Gwynn doing the Maine accent and like the soil of a man's heart is stonier. There's just like I love quoting him and doing like the little accent, but outside of that, it's not remarkable. That's why I was excited about the remake, is because I was like, cool, take what worked about Pet Sematary 89 and just update it with like a new, stylistic creepiness and get some better actors. And
it does the
didn't
opposite.
do any of that. And so I'm like, yeah, maybe in 10 years we'll get another Pet Sematary remake or a TV show or something.
They're making something. I thought.
Maybe.
I don't know.
Making me sick.
Recommend? Don't recommend.
This one I recommend it. I don't think that you're going to be like super blown away by it, but I do think that it's worth watching. At least if you're a big King fan,
Right on.
like you'll get some enjoyment from it.
What about you?
I would more recommend reading the book because it's not terribly long and it's really terrifying. And also there's a scene where
Bitch, you know I can't read.
where Lewis's wife gives him a hand job in the tub with an UV glove or like a bath glove.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right on.
Weird. But yeah,
Can't imagine why they left that out.
I think it's just a really cool monkey's
create it
paw
later?
story that
The hand job? She did it with the monkey's paw.
He calls monkey's paws of gloves.
Right on. All right,
hey
cool.
babe, you gonna give me the old monkey's paw tonight?
Let's talk about Stephen King's, David Cronenberg's The Dead Zone. This was my first experience with this. If you don't know it, it stars Christopher Walken. It is directed by David Cronenberg. And
He's not walking the whole time.
And probably one of his more subdued movies, right?
Yeah, this was right before he did The Fly.
Yes, so this movie is about a man who goes into a coma. Why is he going into a coma? What happens?
He crashes into a milk
car
truck.
accident.
Car accident. And, oh, that's all right. Yeah, because he's like swerving. I don't know. Yeah, that is a little goofy. But goes into a coma, and then when he wakes up, he's got psychic powers.
Yeah.
And Christopher Walken, I said it to you guys, I mean, this really takes place before he is like a caricature, where he is like Christopher Walken.
It reminds me of seeing
Christopher Walken.
Jeff Goldblum in The Fly, where you're like, oh, this
Right.
is Jeff Goldblum before he was a caricature. And that's what made me say, like, Cronenberg just is good at working with idiosyncratic actors, like getting weird people who
to like
do
give
these
like crazy
lead roles.
performances.
Yeah, because I think
so,
Walken is very emotional, and the performance is really good in this movie.
And that's kind of what surprised me about this movie, is that the psychic stuff almost takes a back seat. Like, he uses it a little bit,
it's
but
much
not a
more
ton.
about his grief and like what he's going through with his condition
and trying to figure that out, and losing his girlfriend. Like, for him, he wakes up, nothing has passed. He has a girlfriend, but to us, it's been 5 years, and she's now married with children. And sorry, that's Katie Seagal. And he's trying to deal with that. Plus, now he may or may not be psychic. Helped solve a murder very early on. I was like, what is this is a weird... It's a weird movie. The structure is surprising, and it is done in a way that I don't think could be made today. I think that it worked for the time because they used to make movies so differently.
Mm-hmm.
Longer takes, obviously. Weird structure where it's like, what's this movie really about?
Well, each
nowadays,
act feels like its own separate story.
Yeah, nowadays, if this was made, it would be all about him solving the big murder of the town. Like, that would be the entirety of the movie, I would think. Or, like, stopping the president.
Well, and I think that's the part that obviously inspired it becoming like a 6-season show. Was
Right.
like, okay, what if we had him solving crimes just like he did in the Castle Rock Killer thing?
Yeah, so he does that, and that whole scene is really good, and then he is learning to just kind of be with himself, develops this relationship with his child, which I thought was heartwarming in a way, and then it becomes this plot to stop this senator from becoming president and nuking the world.
Martin Sheen.
Yeah. Who gives a pretty good performance, too. I mean, overall...
He's just
He's
like,
very sleazy, like car salesman kind of shit.
He's chewing up the scenery, that's for
Yeah.
sure.
Loved it, though.
Yeah, but you had talked about how like sad the movie was, and I had completely forgotten that the premise was like that he goes into like a 5-year coma, and just that, like, I've always thought, like, you know, how devastating that
yeah.
would be to have like your life all going for you, and he's so happy and everything, and then 5 years passes and it's like, and even in the movie he doesn't fault her for moving on, like, deep down obviously he's sad about it, but he isn't immediately like, how could you, like, yeah, you moved on. He's like, it's been 5 years, like, she's married and she seems happy, like, that's cool, I guess, even
and
though like
he's
still in love with her. Yeah. And yeah, then on top of that, he obviously has like a disability now, which I felt really this week could have been movies with people whose legs don't work right. Because so many of
the TV
these
show we covered in
Yeah.
our bonus.
Yeah, so many of these movies where there's at some point somebody is using crutches or a wheelchair, has legs that are broken.
How funny.
But yeah, he becomes increasingly isolated because at first, with these psychic powers, it's kind of, well, first he tells like the nurse in the hospital that her daughter is in a house fire. She gets rescued. I love that the movie kind of immediately has at least for a little bit, the world immediately is like, oh shit, this dude's psychic. That's crazy. But then they start hounding him so much about it that he kind of goes into isolation and tries to hide away because, well, and then also I'm sure it sucks touching people and seeing their past, present, and future. He gets harassed by that reporter who like comes up to him and is like, yo, like, touch me and read my future.
It kind of reminds me of like the opposite or like the good version of Needful Things, where it's like, I can touch you and I can see parts of you, but I want to help you instead of destroy you. Mm-hmm. Because it's not always like with the future and how you're gonna die. Because I mean, for his doctor, it's, I saw something from your past. Here's your mom's information.
Yeah,
we don't really know how it works, but it is like the opposite of that. I want to help you. Here's how I can help you based off these weird powers or instincts that I have in a way that's like the stark opposite.
Well, and I absolutely loved how that came full circle, where he tells the doctor that his mother's still alive and he had been separated from her in the Holocaust.
Yeah,
and so he tries to contact his mother and isn't able to talk to her, and it's a very emotional scene. And then later, when he's trying to decide whether he should go through with assassinating this senator, he talks to that guy and says like, hey, if you had the opportunity to kill Hitler before he did everything he did.
Classic philosophical argument.
Yeah, but because that man actually, his life was ruined as a child by Hitler and the Holocaust, he has a direct connection and says, oh, well, I'm a doctor, my whole thing's about saving lives and helping people, but I would have to kill that son of a bitch.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what gives Walken, this man who's pretty much like, he doesn't want to get in anybody's business. He doesn't seem like he's particularly an aggressive man. He's very like passive, and he finally has to take action and do something to try to prevent this horrible thing that is supposed to happen in the future. It's a little bit confusing the way the movie tries to handle the idea of the dead zone. It kind of feels like it didn't need to be there. Because in the book, the idea is that the accident like kills a part of his brain, and that part of his brain is the dead zone of his brain that makes the rest of his brain, like a blind person, become hyperactive, and it awakens this like dormant telepathic power that he has.
Because even the doctor's like, you either advanced or you went back to something that we used to have.
Yeah, and in this TV series, they talk about how like plenty of people have also had these dead zones in their brains that have unlocked these psychic powers. And it's kind of hinted at in the movie where he has like that headache on the roller coaster before he gets into the accident. In the book, he straight up has a vision as a kid. And so the idea is that like he's always had these powers, but it wasn't until he had his accident and it like damaged his brain that it fully awakened them to be able to like see past, present, and future. But in this, it's more like, oh, he's got blind spots in his actual visions that are the dead zones, and he realizes that's because he's able to change that outcome if he gets involved, and that the future's not set in stone. It's a little bit convoluted, but
it's weird for me to see something so good from Cronenberg that doesn't always feel like a Cronenberg movie. Like there's almost no I don't even think there's any body horror in this, really.
Not really, no.
The only thing that gets close is when the Castle Rock killer, which I love that twist when he finds, it's a harrowing scene when he's standing there and the girl is about to get assaulted and murdered, and Walken like breaks down afterward. He's like, I was standing right there and I didn't do anything.
Yeah, so good.
Yeah, and this idea of like he can see these visions but he can't interact and do anything, especially if it's something that happened in the past, and then the twist that it was the deputy or whatever who did it. And
the
then he
scene
just
at the
takes
deputy's
off.
mom's house,
With the scissors is the closest that to me it got to feeling like
Right,
a Cronenberg thing, where instead of just cutting his throat or slashing his wrists, he like props
Stabs
the scissors
himself.
up and stabs his
But
own
if
face
it
into
would
him.
have been a real Cronenberg, we would have saw that shit.
Yeah.
Not coming after
and then he would have cut it open, and it would have turned into a weird.
vagina.
Yeah,
Yeah, pretty much. I loved it. I thought it was great. It's very sad all around. I mean, kind of start to finish, it's a sad movie. Even the ending is very
you don't
sad.
feel good afterward.
It's like, yeah, he did a good thing, but at what cost? And so, I mean, he really is a hero, I think, at the end of the day.
yeah. It's funny. The message that they sent about Walken's performance in this movie was that DC, as in David Cronenberg, really pulled a great performance out of Christopher Walken. And I think that it's really funny because we went on like a tangent. I think you posted it on Instagram of us having a discussion about how, like, you know, how you were thinking it was meaning like DC is in Detective Comics. But it almost feels like this in the end could be like a superhero story that's told
Almost like
by
an
DC
Unbreakable.
I was just about to
Yeah.
say that. Yeah, it feels kind of like Unbreakable.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could see that. That's a good comparison, John.
Yeah, I would say the only other like big main Cronenberg feel throughout this is that the characters,
Sadness.
the characters kind of feel like, especially like Walken's character, kind of feel like they're detached from humanity a little bit, and that's kind of like a theme throughout a lot of Cronenberg stuff. Is you have these kind of detached, you know, and the view of society is very, you know, negative and nihilistic.
Especially if you look at something like his most recent film with Crimes of the Future. I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't want to look at it. All right, so recommend from all of us?
Yeah.
It was good enough that I'm interested in the TV show.
I thought the exact same thing, where I was like, that's a premise I could watch
Yeah.
a couple seasons of.
If it's going to be procedural, might as well be creepy procedural.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about this last one here. I'll send it over to you, baby.
1408. I thought I had seen this. I didn't.
Really?
Yeah.
Dude, I unabashedly fucking love this movie.
So true.
Yeah.
I saw it in theaters,
He
and
used to carry around a copy in his car.
I did, didn't I?
I think just because you forgot to take it out, but still.
So, Mrs. Jig and I sat down and watched this a couple of nights ago. The version that we watched had the
Funeral ending? Or
yeah,
the home ending?
the funeral ending. So
Damn
I went back after and I watched the other ending. There
better.
are two other endings, but I read the synopsis for the third one and I was like, that sounds fucking lame. Don't need to see that one. But it's just a very well crafted film.
PG-13 too, and I think
yeah.
it does the best with that rating that it can.
Yeah, I mean, the performances from Cusack and from Jackson are top notch.
This is the movie that introduced me to John Cusack, and I like
Really?
fell in love with him because of this movie. I just love his performance in this. My favorite line of the entire movie is in the very beginning when the guy comes up to him at the book signing and he's like, "Do you have any like recommendations of you know, like really spooky, actually haunted places?" He's like, "I got one for you. Haunted Mansion, Orlando." And the guy's like, "Oh, great." And runs off.
But yeah, it's about this writer who has dealt with some trauma in his past and has since gone away from writing real personal stories, and now writes these like really cheesy, over
writes
the top
BuzzFeed
like
article
yeah,
books.
yeah. He writes listicles in novel form of like the top 10 scariest hotels or the top 10 scariest yada yada yada, and he seems to actively hate his life. I could see the possibility that there may be like fan theories about maybe that he's dead the whole time because of the surfing accident.
Oh yeah.
But anyway, he finds out about this place. Is it the Butter?
Dolphin Hotel.
The Dolphin Hotel. And that there's one particular room that is haunted. And in order to try to go write his next book,
Room 235.
yeah, definitely 235. He goes to try to get into room 1408, where Sam Jackson basically says, "I'm not fucking letting you into 1408. I'll literally give you the keys
It's
to my
an
car.
evil
You can
fucking room."
yeah."
Yeah, and that like builds up the dread around this whole thing. Like before you even get to the room where he's just trying to do everything. Like, I'll give you this nice, you know, fancy alcohol, and like you can stay in our fanciest rooms and do all your reporting.
Stay next
and everything.
door even.
Yeah, and John Cusack is like, "Oh, 1408 equals 13. Oh, very clever," or whatever, you know. And he's just like completely non-believing about the whole thing. And then even like the maintenance guy like won't come into the room. He's like,
Yeah.
oh, you just tap this thing to fix the thermostat, and like, you know, he talk.
I know what the damn thing is.
Yeah, and Jackson talks about how like they have, you know, these very scheduled, very monitored changeovers with the maids of like changing everything in the room.
One of them accidentally got locked in.
One gets locked in, and you know, basically everybody who stayed in this room has had a horrific suicide or, you know,
Dismemberment.
some dismemberment or horrible thing that's happened to them. And once John Cusack gets in there, you get this slow buildup of first it's, you know, it's only just begun, you know, the radio popping
and then the
on,
count, and then the countdown clock, so good. The scene where he goes out onto like the side of the building, thinking that he can get into the room next to him,
just,
and it's literally
endless
just all
building.
wall. So crazy.
One thing I really liked that I didn't notice until this time watching it is the colors. So when he's starting like to be hot and sweaty, it's this very like orange atmosphere,
Warm.
and then as soon as the thermostat goes the other way, it's cold. Everything changes to
Blue.
blue, and I was like, "That's so cool!" Like I know it's subtle, and I know it's been done a bunch of times, but I'm like, that it works because it portrays exactly what you need to portray. Like, how do you portray cold? Make it all blue.
Yeah.
Like you could do sweat. You can tell when someone's hot.
So, I mean, as we go along, he continues to be haunted by this room that basically seems like it's actively trying to get rid of him.
Sometimes it seems like it's out to get him. Sometimes it seems like it's forcing him to get himself.
Yeah. And I think that looking at the film from like an outsider's perspective, it feels almost like
The Outsiders is actually a different Stephen King property.
That's Stephen King.
The Outsider?
Oh, The Outsider.
he thought you said The Outsiders.
I did it first, and then I corrected myself.
It feels like the room itself isn't like actively trying to like just kill whoever comes in the room. It feels like it's more like it draws in individuals who may be suffering from something and then tries to prey upon that, which I think is a very Stephen King concept. As someone who hasn't read whatever the property
Yeah, it's like
is,
Pennywise. It's like
Exactly.
it feeds on your fear and like your worst emotions.
yeah, it fears on your grief, you know, that
and
sort of
you-
a thing. And
you
he's,
taste better, or like you're a better guest in 1408 if you have some trauma in your past.
Yeah, and I mean, you know, that speaks to me. I think that the language that's used throughout the film and the way that we keep tying back into the story from his past about, you know, him, you know, potentially being a bad husband, you know, or him, you know, being in this situation where he, you know, he felt like he could have done more to protect his daughter from something that probably he couldn't have done anything about, and him taking that guilt upon himself makes everything, especially considering like at the end of the film he sets the room on fire. It makes it feel like he's trying to cleanse himself of his grief, rather than trying to rid the world of the room.
And then the movie kind of takes some turns with you and surprises you in a lot of ways too, because it seems like he gets out.
Yeah, you
and we
get that
this
great
extended-
fake out where it's like extended to him like going like
Yeah.
out to the beach or whatever,
Right.
and then
It's so
going
weird.
to
I
the
was like,
post
what the fuck?
office, and then like they start tearing apart the post
Yeah.
office, and it reveals he's still in the room. I remember the first time I saw it in theaters, I was like, "What the fuck?"
Yeah, because you're like, why are
I
we
didn't
still
e-
watching the movie if it's
I
over?
didn't even know what an M. Night Shyamalan was at that point, and I was like, "That's a twist."
Yeah, so then it ends. He burns the room. That happens in every version, right?
Yes.
So then there's the version.
That was theatrical, which is him being he gets out of the room and
Okay.
he's in the hospital, and then
Goes home,
and then on the recorder you hear the voice of the daughter.
and that's what I saw originally.
Yeah,
and I like
and-
that
and
because
to
it's
me,
like,
to
is
me
he
that's
crazy? Like,
yeah, to me
what's-
that's the best ending, because you get that moment where, because throughout the whole movie you're wondering like, okay, did any of that actually happen, or was
Yeah.
he going insane? And then you get that confirmation where he plays the recording, you hear the daughter, and then the wife is standing behind, the ex-wife or whatever is standing behind him, and she has that look of like, and she basically like starts crying, you know, like she's gonna start crying, and he has that look of like, I fucking
Told
told
ya.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I just love that beat.
the ending that I watched this time. He burns the room down and dies,
Yeah, and then
and then just ends.
And then
Well,
jump
they have the
scares in the
funeral.
rearview mirror.
Sam
Yeah.
Jackson listens to the recording, so it's a similar ending. It's just without him.
I like the theatrical one, I guess, more.
I think so. Originally, it was supposed to be the funeral ending, and test audiences hated the funeral
Yeah.
ending.
You want him to get out.
I mean, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I guess I could see like that packs a punch, right?
Yeah,
I think maybe I was just confused watching it this time. That I was like, wait, what?
you weren't expecting
Fuck
it.
is
Yeah,
happening? Yeah.
Yeah.
And with the level of smoke that he inhaled, he probably wouldn't have survived, regardless of if he'd been pulled
okay,
out or
Mr.
whatever.
Science Man, why don't you get all the way off of Stephen King's back? Highlights.
That's where the movie loses you.
No.
Not the fact that it's called the Dolphin Hotel. What a dumbass name for a hotel. What do dolphins have to do with 5-star luxury?
I recommend it. I think as far as PG-13 horror movies go, this is up there as one of the better ones.
Yeah, some highlight scenes that spooked the bejesus out of me are when he's like looking at the window across the way and he sees himself, and then he sees like the person coming at him. That's scary. When he's crawling around in the air ducts and then something starts chasing after him, very spooky. And I love the moment when the room like has the noose or whatever and is like, "There's always our way out."
Yeah.
Yeah, and like you said, it's trying to convince him to off himself.
I think the part that was hardest to watch for me was when he's in the room and his daughter comes forward, and then he goes to hold her, and she's like it's the scene that's being played in the tape recorder, like the "don't leave me here," that sort of thing, and then she just
Like
crumbles.
Yeah,
into
and then his
ashes.
performance around that, it's so yeah.
good. Got a little misty up in there.
Yeah, I love Cusack.
Yeah.
I went on a Cusack kick for a while.
Gotta go on a Cusack kick. Both of them. John and John.
Yeah. But yeah, fantastic film. Highly suggest to check it out.
Cool.
Definitely. Well, that's the King, baby.
Yeah.
Hail to the King.
Hail to the King.
I'm a big Stephen King fan. I know that his adaptations, especially these days where it's just like there's a million, like that Mr. Harrigan's Phone just came out on Netflix. That's an adaptation of a short story that he made that's apparently fucking terrible, but it has the fucking Jaden Martell or whatever. There's just 10 million adaptations of Stephen King stuff, but there are
Mercedes.
There's at least like a dozen good ones and a handful of like masterful ones. I mean, The Shining is one we haven't talked about, but it's my favorite of all time, one of my favorite movies. And yeah, Christine, and I think Pet Sematary is great. But yeah, all the one, Misery obviously is like a perfect film. So if there's any of these that you haven't checked out, we highly recommend them. I think we pretty much recommended everything on that list, huh?
Yeah, it was a really good week. So thank you to everyone that participated and suggested those. Next week, now that we've been children, masters, kings, we are now dead. And we're coming back to life for...
Like Jeebus Christ.
Yeah. We're going to be watching Night of the Living Dead, the Savini remake.
Ooh.
Poltergeist.
Oh, I cannot wait.
Pontypool.
Have you both not seen Pontypool?
I haven't seen Pontypool. It's on my list.
It's so fucking good.
We are watching The Sadness.
Also, incredibly brutal.
Zombie from 79.
Haven't seen it. I'm excited.
Which is Fulci's, right? Fulci's Zombie?
Yeah.
One Cut of the Dead.
I'm so excited to see that one.
Return of the Living Dead 2.
I hear they get so crazy and goofy. I'm excited.
And we're wrapping it up with Shockwaves. So a lot of these are on Shudder. Some of them are on Peacock, and the rest you'll have to rent or whatever. That's all I'm condoning.
Find him by any means necessary.
Yeah. But I'm excited for it. I mean, the zombie genre has become pretty tired, but every once in a while we find these hidden gems, like with The Girl with All the Gifts or Train to Busan.
Yeah.
Shit like that. So I'm hoping there's some substance left in there.
and One Cut of the Dead are
I'm
gems
excited.
in that list, yeah.
Well, and also going back to some of the classics as well. I remember seeing the Savini version of Night of the Living Dead, and I think that if you haven't seen it, you'll be pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, I'm fine with it. I remember liking it enough. Anyway, that's what we're doing. We hope that you enjoyed this episode. Please watch those 7 or however many you can fit in and join us next week. We will see you next time. I have been Tone.
I've been John.
And I've been your cockadoodie co-host and internet darling, Anthony.
Yeah, cock and duty work. Thanks for watching and or listening.
Cock and duty modern warfare.
Keep it creepy.
Hell of a slide off, huh? Cock and duty.